So, just briefly, the history of Scitex. This was one of the first startup companies in Israel, established as the scientific technology in June 1968. I joined in November 68. And let me see if there are some other people that want to join us.
Hey, Isabel is waiting in your waiting room to let her in on her computer. She's now on the phone.
I know. Okay. Okay. 4 people are waiting in the meeting room. Stanley Rosen, Isabel, Paul Gettinger.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay. Let's see. We have 22 participants. So let's continue. We talked about the history of Scitex. In 68, the name changed to Scitex. And when we started to develop imaging products from the textile, and then we changed into the graphic arts industry. At that point, the logo of the company changed from this to that. In the mid 80s,
Go into the slideshow mode.
What is slideshow mode?
Up at the top of your PowerPoint screen, see the slideshow, or down at the bottom next to the 90%, click that little chubchik thing.
What are you saying? You don't see the slides?
We see just all the slides, but not slide
by
by slide.
You don't see the presentation.
Right. So down near the zoom at the bottom,
presentation mode.
click on that little presentation mode, not the thumbnail mode. Yeah. That should do it.
Click. 1, 2, 3. Click.
No, you see it?
No, go to slideshow and say, well, maybe start.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one, but it doesn't do anything.
Try with the on the upper menu on slideshow.
You see it right now?
Yeah.
It's
Now
not
you should try again to click.
It's not a slideshow. It's just the slides themselves. But if you go up to a slideshow on the menu on the top, then you'll have the option to start the show.
You have to go out of the share, try the slideshow, and then you go back to the share. That's it.
Hi, Stanley. Now we're
That's it.
Oh, yeah, it was that?
Yeah, that was it.
That was it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wonderful.
Okay. This is crazy.
No, you have to go first to slideshow, then you share the screen, not before.
Yeah, okay. So just to finish it up, Effie, the founder of the company, left towards the end of the 1980s. Aria took over and brought the company to like $700 million in sales. After Aria left, we had Yoav becoming CEO of the company. and left after he or the board of directors managed to sell it for nothing to Creo and then became Kodak. The photography business of Kodak has completely disappeared, and what is left is in fact just a graphic arts business, which is Creo, Scitex, and some leftovers of some other things. So
Scitex Vision, large format.
no, Scitex Vision and it was sold to HP. So this is just to summarize. This is on the background of the annual reports from the same period. Since the company issued stock on NASDAQ, you see that every year started with a bang, went up, and continued to slide down. Then Aria took over and shares went up and then started to slide down. Yoav took over and the sales remained more or less constant. And then there was this episode called Agassi, just a manager that was brought from the outside who managed to destroy the company to complete dust particles. And you see what happened to the stock price. And this is where the company was sold to Creo. The history of application engineers, we're going to talk about it, but there was a real question in the beginning, are we customer support or sales support? And this was the question, are we part of marketing or are we part of the service organization? The initial training of most application engineers was in Israel, and you see training is very angry of everybody on the left-hand side, and we even see Pancho sitting there in the back of the class.
And Dan Sharon.
And Dan Sharon, yeah, okay. So what was the application engineer's role in Scitex? Customer training, demo center, trade shows, and some of them did help to R&D and were a little bit more invisible, but extremely important, like Eitan and Rafi, who spend most of the time with R&D in Israel. So we have most of you people on this list participating, and the individual presentations will be divided into three parts: my days at Scitex, what I've been doing, and what do you do today. The order was just selected in random order, and please stay within the confines of the 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to give the first one just to demonstrate what individual presentation is going to be. So, as I said earlier, I'm one of the first employees of the company. I'm employee number 11, by the way. I joined in November 1968 as optical engineer in R&D, and later I became service engineer. I did 3 tours of duty in the United States as optical service engineer in the mid-70s, application manager and later marketing manager in Boston. And this was in the early 80s. And the third one was vice president, business development and sales in Boston at Iris, the company that we acquired. And I left Scitex in 1996 after 28 years with the company. Since leaving Scitex, I had my strategic consulting business in digital imaging, working with quite a few companies, including Scitex, Fujifilm, and a few others. And in the early 2010, more or less, or just before, I worked for about 7 years for a couple of Israeli companies in the US as a VP and general manager of the operations. I retired about 3 years ago, and what I'm doing, just a second, this was my Iris days. This is when Iris was trying to get into the medical imaging business, which was a complete flop. This was me visiting one of the trade shows with Aviv Haruta from Nihon Scitex. By the way, I'm organizing a Zoom call with Scitex Japan next weekend. Right now, I live in Los Angeles. I have 6 grandchildren, 4 in Israel and 2 in the US. And what I'm doing with my days is I ride my bicycle and ride my Tesla. And when I ride my bicycle, I try to take my grandchildren with me. Okay. So now let's go, we'll go Eva first, and Orly will be second, so that Orly said that she has to leave early, so I put you the next one. Eva, go ahead.
Thank you, Nitzani. So first of all, I can already see in the picture Meir Ben Zeev, and at the last minute, he sent me a message that he apologizes he cannot attend, and also Mark Linot. They are all very sorry, but they were looking for recordings, list of participants, and so on. I can share with them. So I joined Scitex in 1982 until 1995. I was a training manager for the AEs, and as you can see, I developed the SWIFT, the self-training program, which today is so obvious. Everybody has that, but then it was something that nobody had. Self-training. And here you see me in Thailand in an exhibition demonstrating. It was called SWIFT, demonstrating, and Meir Ben Zeev behind me is explaining what people see. Okay, here's a press conference. I selected this picture just because Effie is sitting on top of the E-ray or Dolev, and you can see also Arthur. And for me, it was a very emotional picture to see them there. This is 1986, a press conference. I don't remember the details. This is an interesting story. What you see is me sitting at the imager, but there's no imager. This is a dummy. We were in Connecticut. We went, a couple of us with Effie and other people, to Connecticut to the, what was the name of this Italian designer that designed the imager? And we went to his house. It was snowing and cold. And in the living room, you see the very nice parquet and everything. He had this imager made of cardboard. And I had to sit there and make believe that I'm working so they could see if it was, you know, convenient, easy, whatever. I have no idea. Don't remember what they were looking for, but it was funny that I'm working on a demi cardboard imager.
It's still laughing.
Sorry?
Ferrara was his name.
The what?
And you are still laughing.
Yeah, no, there's nothing there. It's cardboard.
I think his name was Ferrara.
Yes.
Italian, something Italian, yes, yes. Oh, and Effie brought a professor from California University to check how I was sitting and my hands and if it was easy or not. What a mess. Anyway, that's history. can move next. Okay, this is also history. I'm doing a demo for the president of Israel, Herzog, no? This is Herzog and his wife. And I can't remember the name of the AE behind me.
Salik
Barda.
Livron.
What's his
Salik,
name?
Salik.
Yeah, Salik,
Livron.
yes, Salik
Wait.
Livron.
And I think that he died a few years ago.
Salik died?
No, really? Oh,
Yeah.
boy, that's terrible. Anyway, this is history. He came to see us. I have to remind everybody that when Shamir was the CEO, his father, who was then prime minister, Shamir also came. And they are both very short. And we had lots of fun that day. He came on a visit to Scitex and we were laughing, you know, Yom Horim, Parents' Day in the company. Anyway.
Michael Ross is on the left.
Who?
Michael Ross. I can see his nose. On the left side, the very left side.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
He lives in San Diego.
Okay. Okay. What is this picture, Nitzani? Where did you get this from the Scitex?
Eva, it is you. What can I say?
This is from the Scitex reunion we had some time ago. No, I sent you a different one, a funny one. Come on, you didn't put it?
No, I don't have it.
Huh?
I don't have it.
I sent you one.
Okay, I didn't put all of it.
No. Well, okay, I'll tell the story anyway. The picture that I sent you and you didn't put there is me wearing, as usual, a very clothes with the skirt with the cut and the top cut and very open everything. And the story is, that's the way I used to dress always. You probably all remember, but you don't remember that Nitzani was my boss then. And one day he called me to his office. I don't know if you remember, Nitzani.
No.
One day he called me to his office and he told me, I think I have to increase your salary so you can afford to buy complete clothes.
It's typical, yes.
Okay. I live in Hod Sharon, outside of Tel Aviv. I have no grandchildren, no children, no grandchildren. I have this dog. Her name is Yashu, and this is Greek because my husband was Greek and he passed 2 years ago. After I left Scitex, I went to work a couple of startups and then Precise, if anybody knows the name, belonged to, it was Shimon Alon. And after that, I don't remember where I went. Nice, I worked in Nice Systems. And after that, in Precise was purchased by Veritas in California, who was then purchased by Symantec. And I worked for Symantec for 5 years until I retired. And that's it. I spend my days doing not much because of the corona. I volunteer distributing food, organizing food packaging and distributing to the needy people in Hod Sharon, where I live. And that's my great life.
Excellent. Orly, are you there?
Yes.
The microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hi, guys. Nice to see you all. Oh, the dog just started barking.
We've lost Orly's picture.
The dog ate
Where was
my
Darcy?
microphone.
The
Only-
dog froze. She was frozen. She went out probably to come back in.
No,
There
it's
we go.
the internet. Well, okay.
I have some problems. Can you hear me?
And now we can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Now we
Also
don't.
see you now.
Now we
Oh,
don't.
we can see you, but can't hear.
Click
You're
on your
frozen.
on your mute button.
No, she's frozen again.
It's obviously very cold in Israel, so she's frozen.
Yes. Okay, let's move to the next one. Sandy, the show must go on. So Sandy.
Great. Well, I was back in the early 80s, I think 82. Nitzani hired me, and I'll always remember my interview because he asked me halfway through the interview, "Do you have chutzpah?" And I said, it must be something he wants. So sure, yes, I have chutzpah. I had no idea what he was talking about. I got out and talked to Phyllis and said, "What is chutzpah?" "Oh, it's balls." "Yeah, I've got balls, sure." So luckily I said the right thing, I guess. Here I am in the demo center. I can tell because of the parquet floor, and loved working on the systems that were there. And so good. Let's go to the next one. Here I am with Hal, and I don't even remember the gentleman's name, but at one of the trade shows, I think a Graph Expo or something in Chicago. And so lots of fun traveling with everyone. So doing AE. Now here's years later when I had left and gone to Imagitex as a product manager for the first flatbed scanners that were on the market. And then my sister Sue was still at Scitex as an AE and then a trainer. And Scitex had an evening at the Celtics. And so she could bring a guest. And so she brought me. And I was always an avid basketball player in college and high school. And so here we are with a Celtics player playing on the parquet yet at the Boston Garden. So that was a lot of fun.
You remember this guy's name?
No, he was not a great player.
Yeah,
I
he
think
was
he
great
only
height. He was a center that almost couldn't shoot it at all, ever.
exactly. Okay. And so after Imagitex, I decided to stop working for manufacturers for a while, and I went and was a system manager at a user of Scitex equipment. So we did LL Bean catalogs, we did all sorts of different work. And here's me with my chutzpah look, little wise guy. And from there, I then had a customer that was getting images from me. And he said, "We need a person like you in our company." And so I left and went to Presstech. Presstech was one of the first that started digital imaging inside the printing press. So we'd connect to all sorts of RIPs and front end systems. And I was a director of marketing at Presstech for 10 years and was recruited away by Xerox when Xerox started carrying Presstech products. And so I jumped to Xerox only because they told me I could be the New England business manager and wouldn't have to leave New England. I was so burnt out with travel. I'd been to Australia, Japan, all over the world doing trainings, sales trainings, you name it, trade shows. I hate Drupa. After being there for 4 weeks at a time, each Drupa I dreaded. So I said, I never want to do another Drupa. That's my goal in life. And so when I got to within 6 months at Xerox, they made me the North America business line manager, and I was traveling again. So long story short, I am now, for the last 17 years, teaching at a community college, graphic design, because they can't send me on the road, and I did not want to travel anymore. And so I enjoy it. The community college, I thought I'd be at a 4-year school, but the community college is actually teaching hands-on, just like I did when I started at Scitex. And so I've done the full loop and I'm back and I'm happy. I'm living in New Hampshire. I've got 3 dogs and a lakeside house, and who knows, I might retire sometime soon. And my sister, by the way, says hello to everybody. She was working today, but she spent many years. She's married, has a son, Elliot, and still married to Scott Barraclough, who was an engineer at Iris. And so still in the family there as well.
Sandy,
Yes.
do you have any idea where is Kathy Hawkins?
No, I don't. And I asked my sister that and she didn't respond it was a long email, so I'm not sure if she just missed that point. I don't know where she is.
I
Yeah.
think back in Texas.
Yeah, I see her there in the corner.
She married the sheriff of there in Massachusetts. No, what's his name?
Mm-mm.
No, you don't know that? Oh,
No.
gossip. Okay, we communicate after the Zoom and exchange gossip.
Okay, so two comments on Sandy's presentation. One is that Susan sent Eva, and Eva forwarded to me 3 pictures just 2 minutes before we started. So these are the 3 pictures. What is this? I don't know exactly. It's probably from the same game. And this is how Scitex America was helping customers, I think, right? So another comment is that Sandy mentioned Prestec. I have to tell you that the world is with circles that overlap each other. I joined a startup company that started by Avigdor Bieber from Scitex that made specialized offset plates that went on the Prestec printing press.
Okay.
And I was the general manager of their American operation.
Was this the same company, Haron? Was this the same company? The same Prestec? Because I was going to ask. I know that we used at one time these Prestec plates in the demo center in
so the story is that we, Victor and the company, and later when I joined, we competed against Prestec, but we sold to their customers plates at less price and better quality. And when I started, there was almost no sales. And within a couple of years, we doubled the sales in America on the expense of Prestec. Prestec really hated all this, so they bought us. So I worked for Prestec for about 2 weeks until they fired all of us. So Sandy and I worked for the same company twice, but I was fired, and the rest of us as well. Okay, Orly, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. So let's go back and start.
Okay, I joined Scitex in the end of 81, if I think I remember. And I was the application engineer in the demo center. Actually, the truth is that I joined Scitex by mistake or by coincidence. I didn't know what I'm going to because I've never heard about Scitex before. If you know Gita Tamari, I just met her as her husband, and she told me about Scitex. She thought that I have a knowledge in printing. I knew nothing. I didn't know what is hardware and software, nothing. It took me a few months till I realized what I'm doing there. And I remember Effie going in the corridor in the middle of the night because we didn't have enough systems. So we did our training with Dennis. Hi, Dennis. I think Martin and me were the worst students in our course.
I think so.
Yeah, we got 40, 20 out of 100 or something like that. It took me a while to understand what I'm going there, and then it was okay. In 84, I moved to Brussels after I met my ex-boyfriend, Albert. He was the architect of Scitex. everything by coincidence, you know. And then I stayed there about 4 years, came back, and I left Scitex in the end of '93. I think the same time that Rami left. We had a joint party together when we left. That's what I remember suddenly. And since I left, I went to study. There was some customers that offered me a bag of money just to stay and work with them. I said, no, thank you. And I went and studied Chinese medicine for 4 years, which between the third and the fourth years, I was working in a hospital in China. I made my stage there. And then I opened my clinic. I edited my clinic for about 16, 17 years. I study all kinds of things, Chinese medicine, Japanese medicine, aromatherapies, and healing. A few years I was doing what we call reconnection. It's kind of a healing method. I was a mentor there for a few years, traveling around Europe a lot. I really liked it. 3 years ago, I closed my clinic after my mother passed away. I didn't want to take care of people anymore. I had enough. I'm doing healing from time to time, sending healing from distance. All these years, of course, I had my art, visual art. I had some exhibition during these years, and I'm still doing it. Traveling the world, not the last year, unfortunately, very sad. But I love traveling the world. I went, the last trips was with Varda and Ruti, which is not there, Ethiopia, Burma, many other places. We were supposed to go in August to Kyrgyzstan, but of course, you know, call of nature, what you say. That's it.
Only.
Yeah.
Just tell me if I remember rightly, did you get once stuck in the demo center in Brussels and have to call the police?
I don't remember something like this, maybe.
Well, somebody did. And they ended up calling, I think, Avi Bachar.
Okay.
To let them out. Don't worry, I just thought it was you.
I have no recall of it, but you know, the life in demo center, it can happen because we work crazy hours there.
Aaron, can you show the first picture again? I want to ask Martin, who was the guy? No, the second, sorry.
Johan and Martin.
Yeah, that's Johan and Martin. But that's Richard Bates on the left and Liam McGrath next to you. But the guy on the right-hand side, Martin, who was it again?
Graham, someone. Oh. It was Graham.
Graham, yes. But I don't remember his last name. Graham, yeah, it was pre-sales.
Me neither.
Graham, yes, my God.
So, Oli, you just have to explain to us what is the difference between this picture. I mean, I'm talking about you, not about these guys. Between this picture and that picture.
I don't know. It all took place in exhibition in Drupa.
No. The difference is the length of the hair.
No, it's just up like this.
Oh, really? Okay.
I still have my, and this is the strictest area, as you see.
Okay.
It was fun. The exhibition were fun.
Thank you very much. So let's go forward. Sandy, Susan, Bob, Darling. Go ahead, Bob. Bob, are you there? Press unmute. Bob, Darling.
There. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Wow, look at that picture. That's great. So
I'd recognize you by the voice, Bob.
Yeah, well, very good. Well, I remember Aaron Nitzani hired me, and I think it was 1981, and it was for me it was a dream job because I had gone to RIT, and printing was going to be my life. So it was really amazing to me how many people didn't know anything about printing at the most high-tech company in the business. I worked with Rick Walters in the demo center and Mike Salemi for a few years. And then I was shipped out to San Francisco.
Isabel, press
So-
mute.
Good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Bob, you're muted.
How'd that happen? There. So then I was in San Francisco for about 3 or 4 years. And I transitioned into sales there because I was there with one other guy, Zeb Lerner, who was a service technician. And Bill Fisher was his other salesman down in LA. And as you know, California is a big state, so there was a lot to cover. So I had a sales territory that went from Colorado to Seattle to LA. So I had a very big territory. So I was on a plane a lot in those years. But I was pretty successful. I enjoyed it a lot. It was really dynamic for me. And then I got married in San Diego, and I was still with Scitex. And let's see, then Michael Salemi took a job with American Color, and that's where we became closer friends. We were good AEs. We're there together right there in that picture. And then we started a company called Pre-Press Consultants. That company then found that there were a lot of Scitex users who wanted to upgrade their equipment, but had no way to dispose of their HP equipment. So we were able to take whole systems for pennies on the dollar and reconfigure them and sell them to other people. And we did very well at that for about 10 years. And we had traveled all over the world doing that. Well, maybe not all over the world, but Australia and Thailand and a lot in Europe. We worked with a big Scitex user there, Herbert Cohen, who was a big Scitex supporter from the early days. And then that started to fizzle, and he and I opened a pre-press company in Manchester, Vermont, where I live today, some of the year anyway. And that went for about 15 years, and about 10 years ago, I closed that as pre-press as a trade, a separate trade, kind of evaporated. But I had put in a press, a 4-color press, and a bindery line, and a digital photo studio, and all of that business. And that was a lot of fun. But like most printers, it was a very competitive thing, and a lot of struggle there. So I liquidated that, held on to all the real estate, and then I went into the real estate business and sold real estate for a decade. And now I'm retired, and I spend about half of my year in New England and half of my year in San Diego with my wife of 33 years.
Thank you, Bob. Just 2 comments. One is Michael Salami was, this is how I found you, through Mike.
Right.
And he just emailed me just before this meeting started that unfortunately he has customers and he cannot join us. It's too bad. Wait a second. The other thing is, you talked about San Francisco. But
yes,
you didn't say where did you live in San Francisco when you moved and how we moved you?
Yes, that was very interesting. Was living on my sailboat in Boston, and so I convinced Nitzani that he should move my sailboat to San Francisco because that would be the most cost-effective way for me to live there. And I lived on that sailboat there for about 5 years. So that was a lot of fun. And then when I moved down to San Diego, my stepson and my wife and I really enjoyed that. And so I sailed it down there. It was really a great thing.
So how did you take the boat? I forgot. On a truck?
Yeah, it was put on a truck in south of Boston and trucked across the country, and they dropped it in the water in San Francisco. And there I lived on it. Of course, I lived in a hotel half of the time because I was traveling so much for us, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to live there.
Can I butt in for a second?
Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Can you go back one slide? Can you go back? There it is. Okay, this was one of the trainings that we did in the early days. This is where Bob took his training. So the people in this picture, for anyone who doesn't recognize everybody, it's Mike Salemi on the left, then Mike, and I forgot his last name, but Nitzani, you remember his name. What is? He was
Grossman.
Mike Grossman, right? He was my my original boss. He was head of training. Then Ruben Tripp, a whole story with Ruben. I won't go into that now. And then Bob, me, and Jeff Hurley. They're in there.
Who
So that
also passed away many years ago.
not so long ago. It was about 5 years ago, I think.
Really?
Yeah, about 5. He was out west, Midwest, I think, when in Colorado when he did pass.
Yeah, he
Right.
left Scitex and went to work as a system manager in Texas at a place I was at. But that was
first in
time ago.
Pennsylvania. He did. I met him there in one of the customers' side, but then he moved over to Colorado.
Anyway, that picture was taken just as a point. It was taken in Tel Aviv, and what's it? Yitzhak Cohen, I think, a famous singer in Israel, happened to be entertaining that day.
No, is that right?
Anyway, that's that picture.
Okay, Ruti. Is Ruti there?
I didn't see her.
No, I didn't see her.
No, she's not.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, Danny Herzka, tell us about this picture.
Well, that was my first Italian show in 1979. I think Isabella also remembers it quite a bit. It's what was it? GEC.
GEC. Yeah.
GEC. And we were that was the first printing show that we did in Milan. And Ruti both of us were demonstrating there, and I think somebody decided to I remember that somebody brought us 2 guards that were on the booth, and we were joking around.
Okay, let's go on. So this is Ruti and Gabi Rosnitz also. She was killed in a car accident. You mentioned Herbie Cohen. I think that this is Herbie Cohen. Bob, do you recognize?
Oh yes, that is Herbert Cohen. Yes.
Yes. Well, he was our customer main pusher and the best relationship we had in Holland. The first customer, Stork. Stork was the R. Donnelly of the textile business. Mm-hmm. And this is, I don't know if it's one of his installations, but he was a good friend of Arthur and smoked big cigars.
Yes.
And that brings us to Sammy Toff, who was also a great supporter. He ended up in Australia.
In Australia, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's very difficult to hear you, Danny.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit better, yes.
No, I said that can you go back? Okay. First of all, there's a guy here that I don't know if anybody remember behind the Herbie Cohen. Anybody remember Lifshitz? I was short time. He used to work for me as a service engineer in Scitex Europe. And Ilan Fonos. This system, by the way, was in Boxmeer. That was the first demo center for textile before we had the Brussels demo center.
Yeah.
That's the reason everybody is here. So
and a super scanner in the back.
Yeah, that is correct. This is an interesting question. First of all, Ruti is very, very thin. She's not that thin anymore. Isabel, we're going to talk about her in a second. And this is Ronnie Ross, who got her PhD and later started her own company and sold it for like $80 million, if I remember correctly.
300.
300? Oh, that's give or take 100 or two. The sign on the building is still the old logo of Scitex, and the motorcycle is of one of the employees. In fact, employee number 1.
Effie.
And you know, the old logo was actually a knitting eye.
Yes, that's a good point. Okay, Walter, your 5 minutes. Walter, press the unmute. Walter.
You hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Yes, there we go.
Well, I started in 79, and I think one of the, besides Arie and José Matalon, Danny Hertzka was there. Do you remember that? Do you remember that, Danny?
Of course I remember. We had the same office. So we shared the office several times.
Yes. How many people were working then? Were working at Scitex at that time? 15?
Not too many. Dan Sharon, he was there. He was there, but
A handful of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jackie Alexander.
Oh yeah, our secretary from Harrier. Okay, so I was supposed to start the demo center for the graphic cards before, it took a while before it was ready. And I started demoing in the very beginning. And then Pancho came, Xavier Castle. And he was once in Brussels here. I met him 10 years ago or something. And since then, I don't hear anything. And I can't find a mail address and nothing. Is anybody having his mail address? I would appreciate getting it. Anyway, so then I had to do a lot of pre-sale support and traveling with salespeople. And the company grew and grew. And at the end, we were 500, I think, in Europe. And at the end, I was Vice President Product Support. And I left in the early 90s, I think 92 or something like that. No, 2002. So I worked for Scitex for 22 years.
Here is Sugiyama. What are you doing with Sugiyama here?
Sugiyama?
Yeah.
In Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this picture taken?
Oh. It must be in Israel, I think.
It's in Israel, probably, yes. And Sugiyama sent it to me because I'm going to do a Scitex, Nihon Scitex Zoom meeting next week.
But the way he is dressed, it doesn't look like Israel.
It's Israel in the winter, like today.
Okay, but it's okay.
Walter,
so, yes?
Walter, can I remind you that you came to my flat in Brussels when I was living in Brussels, and you were terribly shocked that we were drinking beer not out of the correct glasses.
Well, it was not, the protocol requested something different.
Well, the beer, we discovered that the beer in Brussels it was very important to drink each kind of beer in the correct.
That is correct. That is correct.
We were just using glasses like this. We were very shocked.
Very uncivilized.
Walter, tell us about your 1,000-year-old house and why did you sell it?
Well, I sold it to be able to pay the one I have now.
That's in Bruges?
Yes. So I live now in Bruges since a year and a half, something like that. So I had to sell it in order to be able to pay for this one here.
Yeah. And what kind of car do you drive? It's a Soviet Zeal or a Fiat 500?
Well, no, when was that? In the beginning?
No, now, what are you driving?
A Tesla.
Tesla.
Model S.
I'm also driving Tesla.
I know that, and Mossi Brudo as well.
Yes, now everybody knows that.
Yeah, but before that, I had an old Prius that, together with a friend, we modified it to, we turned it into more or less an electric car. So we did with a 20 kilowatt battery. We did 100 kilometers with it.
Yeah.
So that kept me busy for a half a year or so. So that was an interesting experience.
Okay.
Since I'm retired, yeah, I did what most grandparents do, looking after the grandchildren, I suppose, getting them from school and bringing them to school. And yeah, now I'm okay. I'm with the help site for Scitex that for people that have problems with PCs. So that's what I did since I left Scitex. I became specialist in PCs, helping people with problems.
Okay. Thank you, Walter.
You're welcome.
Hold on a
Just
second.
no, wait. Just tell us about this.
About what? Ah, this. Well, this certificate was put together by Dennis Kalisser. Right, Dennis?
That's correct.
And then we got Yair Samir to sign it. And because actually there were 2 Scud attacks during the time I was there. Thanks to Saddam Hussein.
Okay, thank you. Dani Herzka,
I have to remind everybody that what was very touching at that time was that Scitex Europe sent a tremendous amount of chocolate for all of us in Israel that were going through the war. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
really
correct.
nice.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Walter, how's your leg?
Very well now. After 4 operations, it finally starts being okay, more or less. So I can walk without sticks now, without crutches.
And you're also learning. And you're also learning Hebrew, no?
That is correct.
Has been learning
good
Hebrew
news.
for 40 years.
I do that for brain gymnastics, to keep my brain busy.
Walter, you've been learning Hebrew for 40 years.
Yeah, that is also true.
Okay, Dani Herzka, go ahead. Your 5 minutes.
Can you hear me now? Actually, I didn't understand your instruction, my presentation, but I'll do it quickly. This is the super scanner, if anybody remember, together with Steve King. And I don't know what show we were, but I think it was a map. It has to be a mapping show. And Steve King eventually brought me to Scitex America, if anybody remember. And I couldn't believe how groomed I was here. Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay, you can go on.
Yeah.
Okay. What's that?
It's on mute.
Okay. Now, quickly about the history in Scitex. I joined in 1976, and that's a good picture for that. I was joining, and I was in the application engineer schools with Miri Bick, if anybody remember Miri, and with Ruti Gachtan and Reuven Trepp. And
Miri's husband operated on Aaron.
Yes.
Yes, and Ruti together with Miri were going in 1976 to the US. I think to this engraver in Hicksville, New York. And I went to the UK, started my wandering around Europe, and I was 1 year in Europe, going every 2 months to another customer. And then after a year, I told Artur, something is wrong here. I'm in Europe all the time, paying in Israeli lirot, and it's very expensive in Europe because I went from England to Milan, and remember Isabella, and and then from Milan I went to Virmit in Spain, and then I went to Germany. So when I was in Germany, I said either you move me to Europe or I'm going back to Israel. You go on. So in any case, that's the first Drupa we had, and this is anybody remember the salesman? Here is Joanna Hunter. together with Miri and me, and go back. The biggest thing that I remember till today is we went in this group, we went with Danny Zetland to a German restaurant, and a woman came with roses, like every time in Europe, and she said, anybody wants a rose? And Danny said, give it to the lady, to Joanna. And this guy handed the rose to her, and then he asked, how much is it? And she said, 3 marks. So he took the rose out of Joanna's hand and returned it to the lady. I think she was completely shocked by this event. But I was in Europe so I moved to Scitex Europe. I lived in Germany for a year, and I moved in 1978 to Brussels. But I was traveling all the time because at that time I was moving to the mapping business. That already Scitex America, because you can see Ed Shannon, who died a million years ago, and with Ilan Fono. But so in Europe, I spent quite a bit of time with Neon Scitex in 1980 and in Mexico. And in 1981, I moved to Scitex America. This is one of the first pictures that I had in one of the shows at STA. I was the application manager of what they call the graphic. Everything which is not printing was my responsibility. We had the demo center in Bedford, again, for textile mapping, everything like that. And we had a good time. It's me and Steve King. By the way, I'm still in touch with Steve. Steve sold his company when he was 55. He has a very large company in New York, and he lives in Northport. And you know, we see each other from time to time. He has a nice wharf. He has a rowing boat that he gets into the water, then rows to the middle of the bay, and then takes his sailboat and goes for one day off and so. So that's Steve. So basically, I was at Scitex America through all the hard time, including the 1986 drop in sales, and then the invasion of the people from ACFA, which is anywhere from Charlie Noonan to what's the name of the president at that time was? And Kathy Hawkins. I'm
Carlisle.
George Carlisle.
Kathy Hawkins. We're completely out of the loop there. We were the old Scitex people. They hate us. Ken Hurtubise, and everybody. The whole group came from Wilmington, Massachusetts, and then I was recruited by DuPont. I followed Zvika, and I moved to the DuPont Electronic Imaging in Delaware and moved myself to Pennsylvania. That was 1988. So from 1988, I was in DuPont till 1991, including the beautiful Drupa that sent us to the Riviera to relax before that. And then meanwhile, I was involved in 2 businesses in Israel that I founded, Fiber Media in Oran, with a friend of mine. But in 1992, I was recruited by Linotype Hell. That's the way I got to New York. I was a VP marketing and product managers at Linotype Hell. So I went to the competition. And in 1996, the company was acquired by Heidelberg. So and after 2 years, I managed the scanner and color management business as a subsidiary. And then they wanted to move me to Atlanta, and I said, enough moving, I want to stay in New York. So I started Healthcare Associate, which is now in 1998. And I had a lot of customers, a lot of companies that were mentioned here, including Victor Bieber and his plates. And Scitex was my customer in 2000. But in the last, so I had my consulting business. I had a major drop in business at that time, but I picked it up because I had because I started to have good customers. I had Shira, Press, all kind of Universal Ad companies. You want Israeli companies, English companies, German companies, but in the last 7 years, or actually almost 8, I'm working exclusively with an Austrian company called Mondi. It's a great company that makes specialized paper for the high-speed inkjet market. I opened the market for them. They didn't want to have a subsidiary, so my company is managing all their business between I opened the logistics, sales, infrastructure, back office operation, and we are selling tons of paper. I got so deep in the paper, now I'm selling about 800 pounds of office paper, even in the United States. So I'm happy. So I actually enjoy it. From hobby standpoint, you see, I had it all in the presentation. You have another? That's my last one? It's funny.
תכף נראה. No.
Okay. So in any case, my hobbies are I'm painting a lot, which is in the last 5 years, I'm putting a lot of time and enjoying it quite a bit. And like Nitzani, I'm cycling, and I'm here in New York, which is not too bad, but my car, I can't go out because it's too cold. So as of 15th of December, I rented a place on the beach in Florida. So I'll just share my time and can bike outdoors in Florida.
Okay, just 2 comments. One is Danny, Andy, and me went to the same high school about the same time in Haifa, in Bosmat.
I've forgotten that. Wow.
You forgot, huh? This was 55 years ago. The other thing is I have so many stories with Danny, and probably vice versa, and but I have to tell just one story. At one of the drupas, we stayed in a pretty good hotel, and Danny, as you know, has specific style of living. So he asked the concierge to send a boy to pick up his laundry from the room and send it to laundry for 1-day wash. And we went to the show, and when we come back, Danny gets his package and he opens it and he finds like 3 undershorts. So what is this? I forgot to mention, we stayed in the same room. We stayed in the same room. So he opens the 3 underwears of mine. So I guess they took my 3 underwears and they charged like 3 Deutsche Marks for each, just to wash them. By the way, it's not my only incident of sleeping with the enemy. In Eli Israel, when I was in the US, Eli Israeli and several engineers came to visit, and one of the weekends we took a car and we drove to New Hampshire, and they ran out of room space in the hotel. So eventually I ended up sleeping in the same bed with Eli Israeli. So Danny, it was even better than you. Okay, Isabella. Now let me say, Isabella is not part of Scitex, but she is a part of Scitex. She is wonderful. She is being remembered and mentioned in many conversations and in many pictures. And Isabella started with Scitex through her father, who was really not a very good driver, as I recall. And Arthur used to complain about him that he is crazy. And in fact, Isabella was the real person that really helped Scitex over many, many years. And I understand you're going to tell about how the circles overlap.
I have to say something. In the first Drupa, I was with Isabella's father in a car, and we drove from Cologne to Drupa to Düsseldorf. And I told him, we passed the exit. They said, no problem. Went to reverse and drove like 80 miles per hour backwards to the exit on the highway and went back to the exit. I almost died.
Okay, Isabella, the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me and for telling me, all of you, that I belong to the Scitex family. I'm very proud of my past with Scitex. They were absolutely very epic times. And well, as you said, I was never hired by Scitex. I was working with Alcotex with my father. And we had the chance to become the agent of Scitex in Italy. So we worked for Scitex in the very early years, in the 70s, in the early 70s. And we introduced the very first the textile systems. So first of all, the design knitting systems. And we sold to companies like, and Svigat will remember that, to companies called Rosetex, to another company called Miroglio. And we then decided that the Scitex engineers like Svigat and Joel Stern should join us in our offices because we needed them for technical support. Some of the times the systems went down and the Rosetex customers were sometimes a little bit angry. So I have a lot of memories. And of course, then we started to sell cartography systems. And then at that time, Dani Erzka joined us in Italy many, many times. You may remember, Dani, how many times we went to the Agostini, to touring club. So we were able to sell.
Isabella, also to the government in Rome to count the number of olive trees in Italy.
We have a lot of memories, of course. We sold then the printing systems, the textile printing systems, and we sold to very famous companies, again, like Ratti, and we had a lot of fun going to the Ratti companies, buying the seal scarves, but of course we also were working a lot for selling and for assisting those systems. So we have a lot of memories, and you may remember Danny, the Scottish guy, and also Svigat will remember him, Lee Nichols. How many times?
It's Ratti. He was at Ratti.
Remember?
Yeah.
Of course.
I was training him.
I spent a long time there working, and of course giving technical assistance. You Svigat and Danny, you gave technical and training courses, etc. And then many times I went to Brussels. First of all, I was the one that was taking customers to Israel. When we went into the publishing industry, that was the very first time that I had the chance to work in the graphic arts. I had to learn a lot of things, and I owe my later success in my career to that time when I learned about the publishing systems of Scitex. So, of course, I took to Israel very, very important publishers like Mondadori, like De Agostini, like Touring Club, but also like successful and the printing system, the publishers to those big publishers. So absolutely fantastic experiences for myself. That were my first trips to Israel. Well, that was Chicago. We were already now in the publishing industry. And I was there with Isabel Felsberg. And I had also, oh, what happened? I lost you. I lost you.
Have
Well,
something.
but
We
I
can
can
hear
go
you.
on with my iPad, so I have a backup. I learned to
We
have
can
a
still
backup. I should.
Yeah.
And can you still see me?
See.
Can you hear me?
See.
Yeah, we hear you.
But then what happened? I don't know. This is my browser that sometimes drops me. Well, here I am. So those were absolutely great years for me. And I made a lot of friends around you. And I was many, many times on exhibitions with you. I organized with you the GSC exhibition in Milan. We worked very hard, as you may remember. And then I was with you at all Drupas, and we had a lot of fun in Düsseldorf and in Paris and in Chicago, etc. I also had I may say that, a love story with Dennis. Is a very good with Dennis Kaliser, not with Dennis Zetland. Zetland was a very good friend of mine. Yeah. 70, no, that was Drupa, I guess. I think it was Drupa in the 79, or no, I can't remember exactly the years. I can't remember the years.
Yeah, this is 79.
No.
79 was GSC in Milan.
That was 77.
77, 78.
77, and it was we had a standalone booth in the middle of the Drupa.
I just wanted to say that that Alcotex also
77, yes.
sold the
I
first
remember
300.
that from my haircut and from my perm. I never had such a perm after that. Then, of course, well, the Israeli engineers we got were well, that's a very recent picture of myself after the lockdown. This year I was on the lake. After Scitex, I left Alcotex. I set up my own company. I always worked in the publishing, graphic arts industry. I always sold phototype setting systems and publishing systems to newspapers. And then also the very early internet connectivity solutions. And I opened up the very first internet B2B portal, which was called Global Print. So that was for teletransmitting very heavy printing files with teletransmissions systems, softwares that I sold at the time inside this global print portal. So then I joined DuPont in the 87, I guess.
88.
Danny hired me, and Danny hired me. I became the OEM and VAR's European sales manager. And you may remember, Danny, how many flights we took together, and I took about 3 flights per week. I was selling those very first photographic quality printers to OEM equipment companies and to the very first VARs, the very first Apple centers. And Danny, of course, was cooperating with me a lot. And you may remember, Danny, that we saw the very first days after the fall of the wall fall in Berlin.
You
We
know,
were together.
I'm
Remember?
telling I'm telling
89.
everybody that I went with
I
you.
can't forget that. We
No,
were
I went with
together.
you. The wall was just open, and
Yes.
we walked into East Berlin and met some that were completely in shock. I still have some stones from the wall that I took from there.
Absolutely. That was to Charlie checkpoint we went through, and so those
Brandenburg.
those are my last years. I worked I put together my experience in the IT systems together with textiles, and I started to sell wearable technologies. So that happened by a coincidence. I met some companies, and I said, well, to myself, why don't put in together my experience in textile together with IT? And so I was quite successful, and I sold wearable technologies to important companies, the very important fashion brands like Zegna, like Armani, like Dolce & Gabbana, and what else? Many other companies like Paul and Shark. And those are the days I was on an exhibition called ISPO, the most important sportswear exhibition in Munich. A couple of years ago, I was also selling very technical textile fabrics. Very technical textile fabrics for a company called Sympatex that was a straight competitor of Gore-Tex. Of course, you know Gore-Tex and you don't know Sympatex, but we were quite successful in Italy with selling to company again like Zegna, like Armani, because they were very special textile fabrics. So today, I'm still working. I'm a freelance. I make market researches. I was working for up to a couple of months ago for a very famous embroidery company called Forster Rohner. Some of you may remember them. They make very large embroidery on very large embroidery systems, but I don't want to be very long, but they opened an IT a technology division, and they were making illuminated fabrics with LEDs and with heating systems through embroidery. So those were my last experience with IT, and now I'm still making market researches with a finance company. It's another story at all, but I'm still working. So my present days are, I'm still working, but I'm also fond of photography. I am a photographer, but of course, I'm not a professional. It's just a hobby, but I study a lot, and I also became a tango dancer.
Okay, Isabella.
We saw that one. We saw that
Hey,
one.
passion.
I just want, Aaron, I just want to make a couple of comments quick. One, Isabella sold the first response 300 system in the world to a customer in Bologna. And the second one, when we went to install it, we went through the boxes and box number 1 was missing. And that was the ELP. Yeah, the ELP was missing, and the driver said, I noticed that there was some weight problems on the truck. and but it was we had lots of fun. We had lots of fun together.
You remember that guy that was always shouting at us?
Yeah.
Well, I also have a story about Milano.
We were always on the phone with him, and I said, and
So, what was the name of the guy from Prato?
Pardon?
The knitting company in Prato.
The name of
The knitting company in Prato, near Firenze.
Yeah, there was Prato and in Calenzano.
I can't remember his name. I remember the name of the company. The company was Scitex. And, you know, he was always calling us and shouting on the phone. But those were the very early years, of course.
Yeah, Isabella, Malki knew them very well.
The Miraglio, you remember? Mr.
Oh, Merolia, yes, and Andreotti, and Latti.
Cristina, you remember? And
I want to add something about Isabella Catalecho, which I thought was very funny. Can you hear me or see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
One time after a drupa, Isabella and Arthur went back to Milano together, and in the Cologne Hotel in the Intercontinental, Arthur asked Isabella, "Which is your luggage?" And I remember Arthur said, she pointed to the general area, and he thought, boy, does she travel heavy. And she thought, wow, Arthur has a lot of luggage, but there was a lot of respect. No one said anything. So when they arrived in Milano at the airport, one said to another, "This is your suitcase?" And no, it's not my suitcase. "Is this your suitcase?" No, it's not my suitcase. They had brought with them from Drupa somebody else's suitcase, and the Intercontinental in Cologne was looking like crazy all over for somebody else's suitcases, and they had to call. And I don't know if Isabella remembers that. Do you?
I remember that. I perfectly remember that. I think that happened in Milano because we had to go to the Israeli consulate because of that, because of the change of the suitcase. I think I remember that, well, in GSC in Milano, we had to go to the Israeli consulate because we had the Israeli police around the booth.
Okay.
Outside?
From Isabella, now we go to Isabel. 5 minutes.
Okay, sorry. I'm always very long.
5 minutes. I have like half an hour.
So squeeze your 1 hour into 5 minutes.
I'm the furthest one away from all of you. I deserve 6. Well,
okay.
First of all, I want to thank Aron Nitzani for this wonderful, wonderful opportunity to see everybody again. I think it has taken a lot of time. This does not count in my 5 minutes. This is the schmaltz. The schmaltz does not count. I'm so happy to see many people that I know and many people that I don't know, because I'm much older than everybody else. The truth is, I'm so sad that these things didn't exist during all the past years, because it would have been so much easier to keep in contact. I live in Bogota, Colombia. I come from a textile background. And when I joined, I was in Stork, which you already explained what it is, taking a course in engraving and printing. And I heard Hebrew. And as I am Jewish, I went into the room and I saw this huge machine, and I saw Yuval Asodi and Avi Dali and Samuel Tov. And they're talking and about the system, and they called it the system, and what is it? And I saw this machine, and I said, this is wonderful. And I said to Yuval, I would really like to learn how to use it. And he said, the only way to learn is to buy one. And I said, look, it's $450,000 at the time. This was 1976. There is no way I'm buying it. He says, well, then I'll go work for you. And he said, we only hire electronics engineers. So I said, I'm going to see what I can do. So I traveled to Israel, and I asked for an appointment. I had some kind of recommendations from Leideckers. Mr. Leideckers was the store president. Yeah. And I told him I want to go to Israel. And this other man that you just mentioned, that I have forgotten his name, Herbie Cohen, and Bernard Van Hayek. They recommended me to work in, I can't remember the name of, Argamon or something like that. The president was Samuel Clear.
Argaman.
Argaman. So I went to Argaman, and it was sandy and hot, and I didn't like it. And I did a whole tour of the textile industry in Israel, and I said, no, this is not for me. So I ended up visiting Scitex, and in Scitex, everybody spoke English. It was air conditioned. It was near to the beach, and I said, this is where I want to be. So I set up an appointment for I set up an appointment with Danny Zetland. And I walked into Scitex, and I can't remember the name of the girl at reception, but it was a very small reception. She was very kind. And I sat there. And this guy came in, this really tall man, pretty good looking. And he said, he spoke to me in Hebrew, and and he said, well, what are you doing here? No, I'm here for a job interview. And what is your job? And I don't know. And he talked to me and kind of flirted for a few minutes, and then he left. And I ended up with Danny Zetland. And Danny Zetland, well, I don't know if we can hire you. We have, when I entered Scitex in 76, we were not applications engineers. We were systems instructors. And he said, I don't know if we can hire you. We just hired 4. And we took them from different backgrounds because we didn't know exactly what the profile was. And they had just hired Danny Herzka, Reuven Trepp, Ruth Gartan, and Miri or something, I can't remember her name.
Miri Bick.
Yeah. So I said, well, okay, but let me think about it. And the president of the company was very impressed by you. And I said, I don't know the president of your company. And he said, what do you mean you don't know the president of your company? I said, I don't know who you're talking about. And all of a sudden he said, like, he's over there. And he pointed to Effie, and Effie got up, and said hi. And I said, oh, he's the man who just talked to me. But I had no idea who he was. So he said, let me know. And then this was in Herzliya Pituach, and I was staying with an aunt in Jerusalem. And like a month later, I went back, I took the bus, and I said, look, are you going to hire me? And he said, well, we don't want you for Chutz La'aretz, we want you for Israel. We're going to have a demo center. Would you like that job? And I said, yes, I would. Okay, I'll let you know in a month. And then in a month again, I went back. No, we don't want you for a demo center. In other words, he didn't know what he wanted me for. So he had Arthur Lowe interview me, and Arthur always told me that was the worst interview ever, that he didn't like me and that I wasn't good. But anyway, it was time. At that time, they had just sold the system to somebody in Barcelona. I can't remember their name, Pichotto, something like this. They were having enormous problems. And since I am a Spanish-speaking person, they sent me to Barcelona to kind of hold their daughter's hands.
Virmit
was the agent. Virmit was the agent. This was a printer. And I held this woman's, Maria Isabel Pichotto or Pachotto, she was very Catalan. And I stayed there for like 6 months, and the problem was never solved, but the man was very rich and was happy that his daughter was working with me. And then, well, things just evolved, and they started using me as part of the group. I made very good friends with Ruthie, with Isabella, with Yuval. I'm still in touch with Goni Halevi, Shmulek's wife. And I'm still in touch with Roger Matalon, who I visited with my husband 2 years ago in the south of France. And I worked in Scitex. I was very young, I think. I joined Scitex when I was 24, and I worked there for 5 years. I loved every minute of it. Every minute I loved it. I was very proud to be part of such a bright and innovative team. They were like newsmakers, they were groundbreakers, they were just amazing, and it was just honored. I was honored to be with them, and I admired each and every one of them, all my colleagues. And funny stories, I have 100 of them. I mean, one time they sent me to Germany, and I remember that Danny Zetland called me and said, are you having trouble with the German, meaning the language? And I said, no, I'm not having any trouble. They're having trouble with my German, because my German was a mixture of Viennese and Yiddish. It wasn't really proper German. So everything was a lot of fun.
Isabel, can you talk about going in a train in China and making all the Chinese singing?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. They said, the only place that I said that I would not go to was Russia, because I was scared of going to Russia, because when they saw the system, they promised, I don't know how much production, and it was always like unthinkable of this production. And I said, no, in Russia, and if they say that I have to stay there till the production is completed, so Rubentrepp went to Russia. But I was in China with, there's pictures of that. I was in China with Roger and Susie Wong. She was our agent there. And, you know, Colombians, we are very happy, and there a lot of dancing and salsa. So I had with me a cassette, and it was a 24-hour train ride. And it was really under difficult conditions. Mao had just died 1 year ago. And so China wasn't what it was today. And I had a cassette with Latin music, and I put it on the train and in the hotel, and I had the whole train dancing. It's true. And well, after 5 years, and that's when Michael Grossman joined, Arthur said to me and Effie, we really think that you should get an MBA. You cannot advance more in this plant if you don't have more studies, not just textiles, but business opportunities. So I started applying, they said, we are applying for an MBA in Harvard, and that they would finance it. And well, they promised me honey and milk. So at that point, I was I think in Zurich or in Basel, visiting Grenzach, a German customer. That was another thing in Scitex that I learned, that we used to call them customers before they bought. When they bought, they became victims. So I had a really bad cold, and my voice was out. So I had to stay in the hotel drinking soup for like 3 days, not talking to anybody, and nobody called me. And like the fourth day, Roger Matalon called me and said, hey, why haven't you been working? And I was like that. And that's when I realized I'm 29, no, I wasn't 20, yeah, I was 28. And I had a really cute boyfriend in Colombia who I ended up marrying. And I've been with him for 40 years. So I said, you know, it's either an MBA or the boyfriend and my personal life. Because in Scitex, everybody, or everybody had a family. And I was like, they could send me anywhere for as long as they wanted. And I never really had where to go. And I had left Colombia 6 years ago. And I came back to Colombia. My husband is a journalist. He is very involved in human rights, in the peace process. And I really felt that I have come from a beautiful country that had a lot of problems with guerrillas and with narcos, which became later. So I have been working as a translator with Doctors Without Borders, with the Red Cross, with labor unions from Norway and Sweden. And it has given me a lot of personal reward to have been part of the peace process here, which was so important. We have been living together for 40 years. We have 2 kids. Simon is a crisis management expert, and Rebecca, who is older than him, works in London in a platform that has technology and high fashion and luxury fashion. We live in Bogota. The only Scitex member that has had the courage to visit me was Ruth Gartan. We took a travel in Colombia, and this is an invitation for all of you to come visit us and have good times again together. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Isabel.
I have before you close. I just one thing. I just remembered I spent about a week and a half with Isabel at Heberlein in Watteville. You remember, Isabel?
Yeah, Heberlein was a great place, yeah.
And it was in the mountain, it was in winter. And I remember it was Friday, and Isabel saying, we used to go and eat in the village. He said, Danny, I'm sorry, but I'm invited in by the Rothschild in Zurich. So I'm sorry, I have to go to the Rothschild and here she went out. But I had a good time in Vatville with Isabel.
Question,
Okay.
Isabel, question. Where did
I had a terrible thing happen to me, a terrible thing. The laser did not work. It didn't work. I didn't know what to do. I was crazy. It was like my third post. So I called some engineer who was close to there, and he said, well, okay, I'll drive and help you out. So he came, and it was like a 4-hour drive in the snow, and he said, okay, and I had not pushed the on button.
Very nice.
Isabel,
I will not tell you everything that I had to go through with that engineer, but he always thought that I had called him because I was interested. No, I was stupid, and it was a horrible experience.
Okay, Isabel.
You're not stupid, Isabel. I have a question to Isabel. Where does Isabel Hadara Ochel come from?
Hadara Ochel is the dining room?
Yeah, but everybody used to call you Isabel Hadara Ochel. I don't know why, but
I think it must be bad fame. Remember that I was called the Yanchuf, the owl, because when I joined Scitex, they told me, nobody can train you. Here's the manual and come in at 6 in the afternoon. And so at 6, there was nobody there. So I learned that if I came at 5 and I flirted a little bit with the engineers, they would help me a little bit. So that's how I got trained on my own. And I would leave at 1 o'clock in the morning and come back at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And they called me the Yanchuf.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel. Andy? Andy? Andy, there? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, the spelling is wrong, but I'll forgive you. The other thing, you've got the pictures. You've got the pictures the wrong way round. This should be the third picture. It should start with a picture of the dinner of the class of 81. Yeah, no. Oh.
That is me.
Okay.
It should be another one. Never mind. You can start with a Wellington. That's also good.
Okay.
The one after that, yes. Well, yes, I joined Scitex actually as an application. Maybe it was Dennis will remember, it may be the first actual application engineer training. At the end of this training, I was told by Mike Grossman, he said there's good news and bad news. He said the good news is that you finished the course successfully and we want you to go to Scitex Europe to do some training. The bad news is it's tomorrow. And the reason for that apparently was I was the only one in the group who actually had a passport that I could leave the next day. And they sent me to London, to Nottingham, where Pancho was doing a training. Now, at a big newspaper called the Hathwaite Printing Company. Now, Pancho's method of training was to have this manual open and he would just extract pages and randomly choose to train on whatever was on the page of the day. And so he was very happy to leave me with the mess that he started over there. And I remember him saying I don't know actually if it was him or somebody else who said to me, don't worry about it. The thing is that everybody knows less than you do. Because remember, I just finished a training. I'd never even seen a system in operation. So that's how it started. Now this Wellington, this thing that I discovered by chance was everybody who came from STCL to STE stayed at the Wellington, which was an apart hotel just next on the other side of Avenue Louise. So it was like 5 minutes walk to the demo center. So I have very fond memories of the Wellington. The other story, which is very relevant to this Zoom meeting. No, not that one.
No,
anyway.
I didn't put all the pictures. I just picked up very few.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Anyway, this is a story that's got to that Walter will remember, and that's to do with a demo for a French customer in Stockholm. I don't know, Walter, if you remember that. It was very memorable because after dinner, I went back to my hotel, different one, and Walter took the customer to wherever they were staying, and they were stopped by the Swedish police and breathalyzed, or at least Walter was breathalyzed because he was driving.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that, Walter?
Of course I remember, because I had to blow in the machine to see if I had alcohol in my blood, and I had, so they almost put me in jail.
Yes, and I turned up for the demo the next morning. There was no Walter and no customer because Walter was at the, and the police had taken the keys of his car, and the customer had to go back to their hotel on in a taxi. It was a very memorable moment in my Scitex career. Anyway, I worked in Scitex, mainly in Scitex Europe, until 1985, I think, so 4 or 5 years. And then this picture that you're looking at now is from Image Workshop, which is a company I started with an imager, which you can see, to offer creative services to people, to anybody who was creative. And actually the first customer who walked through my door was a photographer who thought that this was the best thing since sliced bread. And and this was right in the middle of central London. The system was sold to me by Charles Burnitz, who I think a lot of you remember. I worked with Charles in Scitex, and then later I worked with him for quite a few years in Indigo as well. I mean, Indigo was for a while a bit like second Scitex. I worked with him, I worked with David Leshem. I think David Leshem, is still somehow connected to the people from HP Indigo. Anyway, after Image Workshop, I had, towards the end, I had my daughter, whose house I'm in at the moment in Rehovot. She's just had a baby, so this is my first grandchild. I'm in her apartment in Rehovot at this moment. If you can hear a baby crying, that's my grandchild. I actually live in London. I've had my own company now for about 20 years. It's a company called Design for Print, which is sort of consultancy. I write a little bit for some trade publications, and most of the work that I do is with a company called Seagate that is it's a boring connection with Indigo. It's somebody that I met in Indigo. He set up this company. Some of you may know him, a guy called Eran Baram. And I've been working with them for quite a long time. And this year was what I should have mentioned in the beginning. I was probably, I don't know if the only person in Indigo who, my degree was from Bezalel. I came to Scitex from Bezalel Academy. I'd studied fine art. So my ambition in life was actually to be an artist, not to be an applications engineer. And this year I was supposed to have my first one-person show in New York in April, just as the corona happened. So my work is sitting in there in Manhattan. And in 1923, all things being equal, I may still have this exhibition, but it's sitting now in the basement in a gallery in New York. And that's me.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy. Let's move on. Zvika.
Oh, Oh, Isa, were you there? This was in 1979. In
Oh,
This
sorry,
is in
sorry.
the army, that Erzka. But doesn't matter. Let me start that I joined Scitex in 1976. I was employee number 146, and I joined as a service engineer. And after about 3 months training, I moved to Italy, to Milan. I was actually hired to replace Shmulik Alevi in Tokyo, but then Shmulik decided to stay. And Uzi called me and said, listen, would you like to go to Italy? Because we tried to get an Italian engineer that speaks Italian, but we couldn't find one that knows electronics. So we'd rather teach you Italian and not somebody else electronics. So that's how I ended up in Milan with Isabella and Alcotex, and had a lot of fun. Took them about 3.5 years to get me a work permit, which was only valid for 1 year, non-renewable. So that's Italy for you. Went back to Israel to R&D for 2.5 years. Then I replaced Aaron Nitzani in the United States as an applications manager. He went to be a director of marketing, and I replaced him. Was in pre-sales and post-sales, and then in pre-sales. In post-sales, I had there's a guy there, Stanley, that used to work for me. But the picture here is in GC in Milan. You can see everybody that came for the installation of the first Response 300, which then went to that guy in Bologna. And this is a beautiful restaurant where you get aprons and they ring the bell. And when you get in, it's a fish restaurant. It's a great memory. I don't know if you want to move to the next one, Danny. I don't know. Aaron, not Danny. I can't even remember where this is. But it's good that you found
Interstoff, Zwicka. This was in Frankfurt, Interstoff.
Oh, that was in Interstoff with Ruef. No?
Yeah, I cut the picture. I found it on Danny's collection, and I cut it with the unnecessary people, and I just left you.
Yeah, because I sent you a couple of pictures with Danny Herzka that I took in a basement of a hotel in Köln that we did with the Ruef, which was in Austria. Not this one. This one was way before.
No, I put only 3 or 4 pictures each, so I didn't put all of them.
That's okay, but we had an exhibition with Ruef. But then when from the US, I left Scitex in 1988, and I joined DuPont, and I worked for DuPont in the United States for 8.5 years, and then I was transferred to Tokyo for 4 years. And during those 4 years, DuPont sold everything to AGFA and kept only Cyrel, which is the flexographic part of the business, and chromoline, digital chromoline at the time, because those was mainly core technologies of DuPont, and they kept it. So I joined the flexographic part, and from Tokyo I was transferred to Melbourne, Australia. And after a year and a half, DuPont had a very bad year. So the first ones to get hit are expats, and they wanted me to go back, and I didn't want to go back to the US. So I joined a local trade shop for a couple of years. And then I was hired by KPG, which was Kodak Polychrome Graphics, which was owned by Kodak and Sun Chemicals. And about a year into that, year and a half, I was basically hired to develop their flexographic market in Asia Pacific. And about a year and a half into that, Kodak bought, after they lost all the film business that they thought they would have forever, they bought the half of Sun Chemicals. And then they bought Creo, and everything went south. And I saw the writing on the wall. I just waited to get my package and go, because I was the smallest part of the business. And then my wife started her own business in Melbourne, and I just joined, and this disrupted her all the time. That's a no. We had this business for about until about 6 years ago, and when my daughter she finished school in she graduated in Melbourne, and she was hired by PricewaterhouseCoopers as a auditor, and then they sent her on a as a international experience. Where do they send her? To Tel Aviv. So she came to Tel Aviv, and then they stayed here, and then we said no reason to stay in Australia, and we closed the company and came home 6 years ago. And I do call it home, even though I was out of the country for 37 years, but this is still home. Have 3 children. The eldest one, Rotem, is not married, he's single. The second one, Roy, lives in the United States. Have 2 granddaughters, Rachel and Hannah, 16 and 11. And Yael lives here in Tel Aviv. And I, with a granddaughter and a grandson, 6.5 and 4.5. And I specialize in raising them. Basically, I spend a lot of time with them. The other things I do, I, like Walter, have to train my brain, and I learn Spanish 5th year, and I learn Greek for the 4th year now, and now I started spoken Arabic. I decided that I decided that someday I would need the medical system in Israel, and in order to enjoy it, I don't know if you can enjoy it, but you have to speak Arabic and Russian. So I'm starting with Arabic. But yeah, that's where I am. I do a lot of traveling, and I basically enjoy every moment of my retired life. Yeah, it's lots of fun.
Okay, thank you, Tzvika. Thank you. Dennis, floor is yours.
Can I ask questions, Svi?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you have with meat? I see you
Sorry?
on Facebook so many pictures about meat. What's going on there?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've been okay. Well, I've had some medical issues that nobody in the medical community could solve. And every time they told me to do something, I did it exactly what they told, and then I'll go back and I say, I'm telling them nothing happens. And they say, well, you didn't do it right. So they don't take any responsibility. So I took the responsibility to be my own doctor. And about 2.5 years ago, I started, before that, I started on basically no carb and no sugars. And I went into 2.5 years ago into a ketogenic diet, which is actually basically very low carb diet. And I keep at it. It's like it became a way of life. And I fixed all my health problems. I'm very healthy now. I don't take any medications anymore.
Good for you.
I just tell basically it's lots of fun. And hold on a second. I don't know if you hear me. I hope.
Yes, we do.
But in the process, as an added benefit, which was very welcome, I also lost about 30 kilos. So, but that was just an added benefit. The cardiovascular risks that I was in was very high, and I reduced it down to almost 0. So I'm going to be on my 75th birthday. I'm going to come visit Isabel.
Okay, Dennis, Kadima, and 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, all right. Very quickly, I submitted.
No, we don't hear you.
Oh, you don't hear me now?
Bring your microphone down. It's up above your head.
And unmute yourself.
Guys.
You hear me now?
Yes, Orly, goodbye.
Bye. It was great to see you. Have fun.
Only later.
Yeah,
Only later.
Bye. Okay, I try to go
Okay,
I'm going very fast now. I sent in many more pictures than you got here, so I tell the whole story. Let me concentrate only on the earliest years because there's no time to go much further. But first, based on what Tzvika has just said, I have to consult with Tzvi later because now I have diabetes and high blood pressure, and I could really, find a way to
Talk
get
to me.
out of it. So
Please
I'll
talk
talk
to
to
me.
you later. Okay. All right, quickly. I joined Scitex in 1979. It was July 25th, exactly, 1979. Another point of history, you just showed me that picture of Tzvi and Danny went back in what, the 67, 68 in the Army. At that same time, I was in the American Army in Okinawa. And that was, I thought, my first chance to come to Israel, but it got messed up because of the 67 war. And they just said no American soldiers could visit Israel for the next 6 months after the war. So I didn't get to Israel until 79. Anyway, so I started with 79. My whole background was in the printing industry as a consultant and teacher of printing technology. And when I decided at one point I'm going to make Aliyah, come to Israel. So I came in, I had an appointment interview with Arthur Lowe. Arthur Lowe says to me, no, he says, what are your plans? I said, well, next 6 months I'll learn Hebrew and then I'll be ready to go to work at Scitex. So this was July. I'll be ready to work at Scitex in January. Arthur Lowe turned around to me and says, bullshit, in those words. I don't want you in 6 months. You got to start work tomorrow. And I hadn't even made plans to leave America yet or anything, but this was a big deal. So, okay, I came as fast as I can. It took a month. And in July of 79, I came in, and the first thing I had to do was put together a graphic arts training program for all the senior management at Scitex, which I did. And then, okay, start in, you're going to be the trainer of trainers. Of course, nobody trained me. So I kind of had to learn the hard way. It was also the very first system of Scitex, which was very hard to work. You had a training session, and the first half of the training session, maybe for an hour or so, was just trying to get the darn thing to boot up. And so that was a bit of an exercise. I can also say that every one of you on the list here, I think I know well. I've worked with each of you at one time or another, and it's really great to see all of you. Anyway, the very earliest days, it started out the first demos were not in a demo center. It didn't exist yet, but we were doing the demos at Talon in Brussels. And the first one to do the demos was Moshe Brudo. So they sent me to Brussels, and all I did was sit there and watch Moshe do the first few demos. Of course, he didn't tell me what he was doing, so I had to figure out what he was doing. I also know that he would talk to the customers as he was going, but every once in a while he would go completely silent as he was working. And I knew when he went to silent that he was stuck, but he wouldn't tell me that he was stuck. And the system, one of the great things about the Scitex system, there was a workaround for everything. So 1,000,001 things went wrong in those days, and we had to figure out the workaround. So Moshe did the demos for a few months. I watched that, and then I was on my own, and I had to do the demos. And it was a challenge at that time. Also, another funny story that came at that point, Ellie Friedlander was one of the early engineers that worked with me. And one day, Roger came in with a French customer, and the page that he wanted done was a double page spread with loads of pictures in it. Now, this was version 1 of the 300 software, and I think you all know what execute was. That's the final step where everything comes together so you can expose. Well, the execute didn't exist at that time. So the only way you put together a complicated page was one command at a time. And each time you did a command, you had to sit back and wait 10 minutes, wait for image processing. So we had this very complicated page, and Roger came in and he sat down with myself and Ellie and Roger, figured out how we're going to impress the customer, which is to say, how we're going to pull the wool over his eyes. So what we did is he sent the thing in advance. Then Ellie and I actually did the processing the night before, and we set up a couple of tables. We would type in one command and then lie down on the tables and go to sleep for 10 minutes while the system was wait for image processing. And that would be one placement of one picture. So we did that again and again and again. It took the entire night till finally we had the equivalent of what the execute was supposed to do. Then the customer came in the next day and we prearranged with Roger. They said, well, man, okay, we're going to demonstrate how this works. We're going to do all the steps, but where the execute comes in, we can't make it look too good that the customer will think that we're really fooling him. So when we get to the point where we do the execute, that's the time where, Roger, you invite the customer to go take a tour of Talon, of the printer. So that's what he did. He came back within 15 minutes later and said, voila, here was the page all done. So the customer thought that it took us all of half an hour to do the page, when in fact it took about 10 hours to process the whole thing. Needless to say, yes.
The error in YMGR thing that kept coming up. I used to get customers calling me and say the Yamanga Manga is back.
What was that? I don't know.
In YMGR, in Y Manager. It was error on the system.
Oh, yeah.
The customer would call me up and say, I've got a problem. The Yamanga Manga is back.
I don't remember that. But anyway, the other thing that happened was in Brussels at the time, this again is. Yeah. 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 Well, Walter, I'm getting to you now. So we came in and Roger told me, okay, you'll do the first shift, and on the first shift, you're going to do demos. Then you'll take on the second shift, you're going to train Talon. So already had 2 out of 3 shifts as like 16 hours a day already taken up. And then Walter came in Roger came in with Walter and he said, oh, Dennis, so you got another job for you. You need to train Walter. I said, okay, no problem. I'm busy on the first shift. I got the second shift. Walter, you come in at 2 in the morning and we'll do the third. We'll train you on the third shift. And of course, and Walter said, no, I don't think so. I will train on the normal hours. So we worked out.
We worked crazy hours.
Yeah, yeah. So we worked something else out. So those are the earliest training opportunities, as we say, in Brussels. Then the rest of my time with Scitex, I spent a lot of time in Brussels and a lot of time in America. Also, when I first got interviewed by Arthur Lowe, I came in, he said, what are your plans? I said, well, I started to say this before. I said, the next 6 months, I'll learn Hebrew and then I'll come back and I'll learn the system and I'm ready to go to work in next January. And he said, bullshit. I don't care if you ever learn Hebrew. I want you to learn German because our first customers were in Germany and I want you to start tomorrow. So I went back to the States and I had to wrap up everything and move as fast as I could. And I did it within a month. I came back and then I started to take what was my training, but it was no formal training. I took a training from Eli Israeli and Eli did the whole thing in Hebrew. And he said, here, you're going to learn the system and you're going to learn Hebrew at the same time. I said, okay. So we did, I did so many months of the training with Eli, and needless to say, at the end of it, I didn't know Hebrew and I didn't know the system. Also, I was putting in the whole day in Israel, in Scitex, and then at 4 in the afternoon, went off to an ulpan in Ramat Aviv and came back 2 hours later, supposedly learning Hebrew. At the end of 6 months, I didn't know Hebrew. I didn't know the system very well. And then I went off to Brussels and under pressure, doing the demos and the like, I learned the system myself. And from there on, my responsibility was to train application engineers in the system. Also, at one point, Eva, did she leave already? Yeah, I think Eva left the system. But here, while I was I was in Israel for 1.5 years, and the powers that be said, we need you more in the States than we need you in Israel. So we're sending you to America for 2 years under the same conditions that we send an Israeli service engineer. So I said, okay. So I went to America, and then Nitzani was my boss for almost 2 years. He went back to Israel a little bit sooner than I did. But while Nitzani was my boss, one of the things... Dennis. Oh, Eva, yeah. So one of the things we were trying to do from Scitex America... I'm here. Yeah, hi, Eva. Anyway, one of the things... I'm trying to talk fast. One of the things we were trying to do from Scitex America is put together a formal training program. And we hired this company from the outside, Nitzani, you may remember. Well, the supposed guy that said that they were experts in training, and we went along and we trained them and we showed them everything, and it went on for about 3-4 months, paying them a huge amount of money. At the end, we said, you know what? All they're doing is feeding us back what we fed them. They didn't come up with one new idea. In the meantime, back in Israel, Eva was hired. She didn't know me. I didn't know her at the time. And they also hired an outside company, but with a little bit more pull. And that was Danny Arazi, the brother of Effie Arazi, who had a much more brilliant idea of building a simulator. Basically, it was a simulator, and that's what became the Swift, which Eva was involved with. And after a while, I stopped training engineers, application engineers. We had enough people to take care of that. And I was doing a lot of firefighting. So I would go to customers and spend a week or so with each customer that was having trouble. It was a follow-up on what I was doing before I came to Scitex, which is doing technical analysis of printing companies, saying everything what was wrong. And it started with Beck Engraving in Philadelphia, where the head of the company of Beck Engraving was an accountant. And he calls me in and he's pretty angry sounding. And he says, we're losing our shirt. Scitex is losing us money. It's no good. So I said, well, prove it to me, show me. So he pulls out a big pile of production sheets and throws it on my lap, and I go through it, and I see there's something peculiar going on about the way they're recording what was going on in the Scitex system. And that led to eventually starting something called a management training, which I started to do, and started the whole management training seminars. And basically I had to draw back on my previous training, not only the technology, but the business end of printing company. And I discovered by doing these audits of printers that what was going wrong had nothing to do with the operators, had nothing to do with the system itself, but had to do with the fact that the senior management, the president and all the sales staff did not understand what they could promote and what they can't promote on the Scitex system. What were the pitfalls and what were the opportunities? So I concentrated and put together this management training program, and I managed to do this program around the world in different places. The idea was to educate senior managers in the companies about what they need to know about how to sell the Scitex system, and also from the business standpoint, how much was it actually costing? So it did a cost analysis of the operating costs of the system, and that all became part of the management training program. So that I did all over the place. So that's what I was doing for quite some time. But obviously as the technology improved over the years, by the end of the 80s, they didn't need me anymore. And there were many other people in the company that could do the job, especially in Scitex America and Scitex Europe. There were they now had their own experts. They didn't need somebody from Israel coming in and helping them out. Now this picture shows something else I was doing, and it started from the very beginning. And that is when it came time to do the demos at the trade show, unlike our competitors, we did not hire as actors to do scripted presentations. We did the presentations ourselves. And when I say we, in the beginning in 1980 in Chicago, it was Effie Arazi and Steve King and me who took turns doing all the demos. And the idea is we did not have a prepared script, and we did it off the cuff. And it worked very well against our competitors, because when we were speaking, we knew what we were talking about. We were not actors. So we could also play off the audience. And one of the things I did.
Dennis, you were standing with a microphone and I was sitting on the keyboard.
Yeah.
And my favorite demos you would do was after the show was over.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
Great.
Hang on a second. Okay, and that's what you see here, actually. So I started something in 1980, and then kept doing it in the rest of the trade shows as long as I was demoing. And that is, at the end of the trade show, we'd put together a spoof demo. We made fun of what we were doing the whole trade show. We made a spoof. I put some effort into the tricks that we did, and it was usually well appreciated. Everybody got a big kick out of it. This picture was taken in 1986. And I might point out that that woman in the center there with the long red hair, she was the one doing the Italian demos. And she was fairly good looking. I just noticed when we pulled in the Italian customers and she did the demo, the customers were sitting there staring at this presenter with their tongues hanging out, probably not listening to a word she was saying, but they were just mesmerized by this presenter. Anyway, at this show in 1980, it was probably our biggest and fanciest setup. And we had the brand new smart scanner was at the opposite end of the trade show. So when they did the spoof show, trying to show, okay, here's the smart scanner, look what it can do. We said, all right, how does this whole system work? We make the scan, and remember the smart scanner now is way over on the other end of the hallway, of the hall where we're doing the demo. So she said, okay, we make the smart scan, and then coming out of the smart scanner comes the data on tape. So we had one of the other application engineers that had worked this out with me. They took a piece of tape and they're pulling it out from the tape recorder, whatever, of the smart scanner. They pull out a long strip, and 5 or 6 application engineers then joined and grabbed the strip one after the other, the piece of tape, and we cut the tape off the end and said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SCSI bus. And so this is the idea of the SCSI bus, and the forum, they round down to the front where I was. Then I took the tape and crunched it all up, put it in a bucket and jumped on the bucket. And it says, ladies and gentlemen, data compression. This is how it's done. And then we're going to show you how we're going to put how the pictures come up on the system. Our system is much better than our competition. It is so good that the demos can be done blindfolded. Now, the person operating the system at that time was Martin Strock. So we had him on the joke, and we put a blindfold on Martin, and he managed to pull up a picture and do a few things with the blindfold on, making it look like you didn't have to see what you're doing in order to operate the system. And also we had just introduced it wasn't new, but came out, we had the imager, had the trackball and the dial. And then I had another thing there, which was a bell that was used, I don't know, in a store where you ring the bell at any time. So with each function that we demonstrated, so remember, only Scitex has the trackball, the dial, and ding, the ball. So all this was, it was a fun time. And unfortunately for me, I guess, as the years passed, the company decided that we don't want to do the demos ourselves. We will do like the others and hire actors and give them a prepared script. So that kind of disappeared. Sandy is here, I see, and at print 85, Sandy was the operator, and we did the spoof demo with Sandy.
Yep. And I remember Effie saying, after we had practiced before the show opened, he said, this is boring. I need this to be live. And so he said, he was sitting in the bleachers. He took off his shirt. He threw it at me. And he said, you match this color live in front of all these people. And it was a brown shirt. And brown has cyan, magenta, yellow, and black different. And I'm thinking, so I'm throwing it in the little light booth and matching the brown. And we did it. And he said, that was fantastic. I nearly wet my pants. I was so nervous.
We did it very well. We had one thing I was showing different things, functions on the system. They said, okay, only Scitex has the slow mask. Now, if you remember, actually masking is very slow. It was very slow in the system. But we had to make fun of it and say it was even slower. And I started talking with a southern accent, and Sandy sat back, put her feet up on the table, like as if everything was very casual, and said, only Scitex has the slow mask. And then we showed making the mask round. One thing I forgot to say in the very beginning, at print 80, Effie was doing the presentations, and myself and Roger Madelon. Sorry, this IPEX. I get it mixed up. It was at IPEX, and Effie said, as a guide to the other two presenters, which is myself and and Roger or, okay, you can do what you want, say what you want, but don't lie and don't exaggerate. Now, he was very adamant to say this, but Effie was also doing the demos himself. And we watched him. And the first time he came up, a question that came up at every demo was how many pages can fit on the system at one time? Now remember, it was only one 300 megabyte disk at that time. So the truth is, considering CTs and line works put in together, maximum 6 pages could fit on the disk. So the first time Effie did the presentation himself, he said 6 pages. But every time he did the demo, day by day, he kept making that number higher. So by the end of the show, by the last day of the show, he was telling everybody that we'd fit 80 pages on the disk, which of course is impossible. But nobody knew the difference.
He also, I don't know if you remember, when all the listings were shredded before Chicago 82 or 3, the cleaning people in Israel had shredded all the listings, and they had to rewrite everything. So they put all Ruti Gartan was there with me, and they put all the engineer, the programmers and everybody on the day shifts, and we had to practice all the demos in the middle of the night, and the system kept crashing. And we told Effie, who was doing the demos, we said, don't do this particular sequence because it crashes the system. And every time he would do that, and we'd have the pattern on the screen and had to go and reboot the system and somehow explain that this was part of the way pages are made up. They always have this test pattern in the middle.
Well, I can tell you that Effie in Drupa 77, the super scanner didn't work. And Effie would stand next to it and do the presentation. And basically there was something on the drum, and he would turn the drum by hand and say, oh, and suddenly everything appears on the screen. So exaggeration, it's not exaggeration, it was a lot of magic.
Yeah, well obviously throughout most of the 80s, we would work only with very low resolution images at the demo. And the people would think that we're working with the real images. So it was a bit of pulling the wool over one's eyes, but if we didn't do it that way, we couldn't have had much of a demo.
I have to say that in Graph Expo 1 year, I don't remember when, we had a guy, a German guy who was being a pain in the ass, was kept on coming and asking stupid questions of the sales guy again and again. I was trying to demo and he was asking all kinds of questions. Finally, he asked the salesman, how heavy is the disk of the system? And the salesman said, depending on how many pictures you have stored. And the guy said,
Okay, Dennis, thank you very much.
Okay, I had a million other stories, but let it go.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And now from one joker to another.
Oh, Martin Strack.
Martin. Unmute yourself, Martin. Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I started Scitex. I think it was 81 or 82. I don't remember. Orly is knowing it. We had I joined Scitex in 81. I was hired by Roger Matron on a Thursday. I still remember. And he said, okay, we hire you, but on Saturday you have to go to Israel. Nice, 2 days. I had a wife and a little kid, so I had a lot of arrangements to do. So I spent, I think, 7 or 8 weeks in Israel. And of course, Dennis was our brilliant teacher. And there were 2 Americans in the course, and they always talked American. I hardly spoke English, so the book was in English. So I had a very rough time. The two first weeks of the class, and what Orly said, yeah, we were the worst students in the class. But finally, it came together, and we ended the course, and I came back to Brussels, and I started in the demo center in Antwerp. I don't remember the name of the company, and we had there the second shift. Maybe Walter still knows.
The scooter.
The scooter, that's right, yes. And that was Pancho and Mayor Benzev who were working there. And we did a second shift, and the customers came to Antwerp. And I still remember we had to do the demo, and then the salesman took the customer for dinner, and we always said, make it a long one, because yeah, the system was not working properly. The execute was in I think 5 times in 10 times was not working. So we managed a long time to spend there to finish. And I think so Walter still know those stories.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. He brought the customer to dinner, and then he came back at 2 o'clock in the morning or something.
Yeah,
and you remember, Walter, that I drove I was still working of living in Antwerp, and I drove with the tape to you in Brussels to handle
to expose and to make the film.
Yeah, to make the film. Crazy times. Then we moved to Avenue Louise. And I don't remember when I took over look at that. So I spent 15 years in Scitex. Then Scitex offered me the possibility to start my own company. And I started the company in, I think in 1998, something like that. And I was one of the first digital printers in Belgium. And we had 2 Spontanes. The Spontane it was a Xerox machine, and Scitex interfaced it. And we typed that struck, that's the English word for struck. We made good years. We survived 11 years. And in 2008, when the banking crisis came, we just bought an Indigo, what was it, 3050? One of the most advanced Indigos. And suddenly we couldn't, all the budgets of the big companies who were printing for were down, and we went bankrupt in 2009, I think. I was then 60 years old, so I said to myself, what now? I have to go on a pension, because to get a job when you are 60 is in Belgium was that time almost impossible. So then I joined. I was a volunteer in the botanic garden here in Meissen in Belgium, and I took a volunteer job there to. This is one of the funny demos I remember. And I digitized there almost the whole seed bank, what they have there. And I digitized there 5,000 or 6,000 seeds because they asked me to get this visible, because they had only database with names, but not a visible picture of the seed. And I'm still working for them. I do the quality control for the digital printing of the herbarium. The herbarium consists of 4 million species. They're all A3s, and we have to digitize this in a high resolution in 420 dpi. And every picture is a TIFF, what contains of 130, 140 megabytes. Times 4 million, you can imagine how much data that is.
Well, I have to tell everybody here to go and look at your website. It is absolutely fantastic. It's mind-blowing.
Thank you.
Everything he publishes on Facebook. So,
Martin, can you refer to this picture of the blind demo? And please don't look at the demonstrator, look at the audience, look at their faces.
Yeah, they're all laughing. It was the funny demo. I think this was I don't remember. I don't have this picture, by the way.
Yeah, this is 1986. I mentioned this is the one where I said that look how we can do the whole job blindfolded.
Yeah,
and we put the blindfold on Martin, but he faked it a little bit, so the one eye was open while he was working. But the people couldn't see that. It looked like he was completely blindfolded.
Yeah, okay, there were good times. Yeah, those 15 years in Scitex was really, and I think a lot of people are saying that, the best 15 years of my life. It was a big family. It was one big family, and I think you don't see those days anymore. You go to a company and you're doing your job, and for the rest, that's it. But we were a family. You knew everybody. Effie was talking to everybody, and yeah, it's 15 years of my life.
I want to say one thing about what Nitzani just said, just to reinforce it, because I have noticed that there are a few ex-Scitex people that have been putting their pictures up on Facebook and other places. And Martin, he's got a Nikon 850, I think, which is the top of the line of the Nikons, and some really terrific, fantastic pictures. Martin is a tremendous photographer. You got Al Turi, has been taking pictures underwater, taking fantastic pictures underwater. Orly has taken some very nice pictures, and Issa has taken some very nice pictures.
And Eitan Rosen.
And Eitan Rosen, fantastic pictures, absolutely.
Does anyone know what happened to Cedric?
Cedric, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no clue where he's. The last time I saw him was a couple of years ago, and I think it's 7-8 years ago that I saw him in Brussels.
He retired in 2008, but since then I haven't heard of him either, actually.
Let me say a little thing about the pictures you see on Facebook. What I'm doing is a kind of photography, is not one picture. I'm doing stack photography. Stack photography is macro photography. And when you know something about photography, when you get very close to a subject, you have something sharp, and a millimeter after that or before it, unsharp. So what I'm doing, I make many pictures of one subject, and then with a wonderful software, I put them together, and you have a sharpness from the beginning till the end. So it's very unrealistic, those pictures, but I made thousands of pictures.
That's something I've been trying to do for a long time, never figured out how to do it.
I will give you a course, like you give me a course so many years ago.
Okay.
I'm planning to make a course about this. Okay, so it's a wonderful photography, and this is you can only do this with digital photography. Analog photography, it's impossible. Okay, so therefore I'm so excited with the Leaf, the first moving to the digital photography. This is the base of my knowledge, what I have today. Okay, and I think this is what I.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. I invited Jonathan. I don't know why he didn't show up, but I just wanted to show you. This is when Jonathan was really young, and these are my first three application engineers in America. And on one side we have Malin, and on the other side the late Phyllis, who died many years ago. This is what Jonathan is doing these days. Rami Gilboa.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Good evening or good morning. I'm very happy and excited to be here. And thank you, Nitzani and Eva, for creating this opportunity. And you know, Martin said these were 15 best years of his life. I could say that professionally, this was the best 11 years of my life. And well, now it's very nice to see the people back, the people who were there. And I enjoyed very much hearing Dennis Scully, sir, who taught me all the theory in Herzliya. And then I flew to Brussels, and Martin told me all the practical things. You know, whenever I was doing something fine tuning, he said, forget it, it won't show on print. So these are the two guys that taught me quite a lot. And this was very, very nice years. Now you see, I can see myself with Nitzani, with Emmanuel, of course, and David Ofek with a wheel. And is it me changing the wheel? I was working, the hard worker guy, like always, Nitzani.
Wait. This was after Drupa. We were driving back to Brussels, and Rami is such a crazy idiot. He was climbing with the Jeep on every mud hill and every empty field. And of course, in the middle of the way, by the way, along the sign on the road sign on the side that says expect service, right? We had a flat tire. I had really bad back. So David Ofek was the helper, and Rami was doing what he does the best. This.
Oh yeah, well, you got this phone. I can tell you that I'm still doing this kind of crap because I just came 5 hours ago from 3 days in the desert with my wife, just by ourselves, sleeping in the car. And yes, I mean, Scitex was very nice, very great opportunity and people, and the big project Nitzani that we did with a mini lab that never happened. So this was a very highlight of my life. But in parallel to that, like a criminal, I was doing motoring, press, writing, testing. I'm still doing it till these days, spending lots of time. We also we have a motorhome in Europe. We had one. We traveled for 1 year in the States in a motorhome. Oh, that's the motorhome in Dumpster Highway in Alaska. We spent the full year in this car. It was great. I mean, this is when I quit working, and that was the best year of my life. No Scitex, unfortunately, but look at the colors. And so I'm still very much a guy that is on wheels, and I'm writing about it. I'm writing in Walla. And that's my grandson, the smallest one. I ride bikes also, like some of you also. And I'm remarried with Dorit after Ruti, that most of you met, some of you knew, passed away in 1995. And then I met Dorit, and it's new life, new kids. We have together 5 kids and 7 grandchildren. And we live 3 months. Yes.
Can I say something about the Belgian drive or these Scitex engineers driving in Belgium? You know, Belgium has the reputation of having the worst drivers of Europe. And one day I remember one engineer was stopped by the police and nothing happened, and okay, we left. And then one time I was driving with either Uri Benassa or the big guy with the beard in one of the Drupa pictures, and the police stopped us. And he got out of the car and the police looked at him and he said, "Oh, don't tell me, you're Israeli. They all drive barefoot."
Oh, barefoot, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I think that, I mean, Scitex was a great experience. I was 6 years in Belgium, another 6 years in Israel. I started as an application engineer. I finished like the marketing communication worldwide manager. I had a great project with Nitzani, trying to reinvent the mini lab. Then it was killed by Arya. And after that, I had my own business of production. And all of the time, in parallel, I was doing the motoring, press, writing, traveling all across the world with off-road trucks and cars. And now we have these motorhomes that my motorhome now is stuck in Manchester because of the COVID, like we cannot touch it. I hope to still find it alive when I'm getting back. And life is okay, even after Scitex.
Okay, thank you, Rami. Varda just sent a note that she had to leave. So Varda was the application engineer, and she now works for Coronit, I think, which is printing.
Yeah, and she had she fell some time ago, not long ago, and she broke a vertebra in her back. So that's why she had to leave. She cannot sit for long.
Okay.
I have a question. When you guys say Arie, what CEO means Arie Rosenfeld?
Yes.
And Yoav is Yoav Shelush or Lulush or something like that?
Shlush.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Who destroyed the company?
Okay. Great. Your floor.
I see. Hi, good evening, everybody. I see you misspelled my name. It's not Great, it's Geert. Great is actually
I see it.
It's a girl's name, actually.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll fix it.
But everybody in Scitex knows me as Spiky. I've never been called Geert. I've always been called Spiky. I joined Scitex the 6th March of 1989. So I was hired by Martin, and I'm still very grateful that he did that, because as Martin said, also for me, these were the best years of my life, because I came out of the production. I was a scanner operator before, and scanner operators, they have to stand all day and they have to work very long hours, and it's very heavy, and there's nothing, it becomes boring after a while. So all of a sudden, joining Scitex, it was like almost being on vacation, being sent around Europe and around the world, talking to people of all around the world in English, in French, in German. It was just absolutely wonderful. And guess what? I joined in 89, and now we are 2020. We are almost 31 years later, and I am still a demonstrator. And actually, Scitex left me. I didn't leave Scitex, because Scitex became Creo Scitex, and then it became Creo, and then eventually it became Kodak. And I am the last man standing as a demonstrator in the demo center of Kodak. So I am now demonstrating, so that's me there. And this picture, I think, Martin, was taken in 93 or 94. This is when we had the biggest team ever. Since then, it's always gone downhill. I think we were then 17 or 18 people, and we had demo centers all around Europe. So the people you see here, they worked in Italy, France, Germany, England, and also Brussels, of course. So this was the biggest team we ever had. So it was actually very nice then. Yeah. So actually, I demonstrated, apart from Blaze and Prismax, I think I demonstrated every product that the Scitex since '89 ever showed. I demonstrated it. This is a picture taken in Drupa 95, and this is me now. But this is 95, Drupa 95, with Moshe Blumenfeld. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm still a demonstrator. This is what I'm demonstrating today, the Xfinity of Kodak, which is the competitor of the HP and also of the Xerox machine. So these are the two biggest competitors.
This is what used to be in Express?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So this is now the newest one, let's say, the better one if you want. They wanted to come with something new, but actually it's the same machine under there. Only they changed the writing heads from 600 dpi to 1200 dpi. But other than that, it's more or less the same. So that's what I'm doing since, let's say, 2006. Then we were still at Waterloo, and then from Waterloo we went to La Hulpe, and then in La Hulpe we closed in 2013. They closed the demo center because it had to move to Ezzin, Switzerland, and I was the only guy left that also moved to Switzerland for 3 years. And then in 2016, they decided that Switzerland was too expensive, and then we came back to Zaventem, Belgium. So, and I came back as well. So, and I'm still there as the last man standing. And in the meantime, well, 6th March of 2021, it's going to be 31 years. So when my daughter was born, actually, I joined in March in '89, and she was born in May '89. So she's going to be 31 years almost. So it's actually incredible if you think about it. Yeah, but that's my story. So I'm 60 years now. I don't know how many more years I can join with. I can work for Kodak. It will depend on them, I think, because it's going downhill, as you know, as if you follow a bit the stock options and the news. But let's see. I'm still there, and I'm the last man standing.
Speaking of birthdays, I just, if you haven't noticed, Martin said that he is 71-year-old today.
Happy birthday, Martin.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov, yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
In fact, I invited Rick Littrell, who is the same height as Martin, but somehow they didn't show up today. He's not only as tall as Martin, but his birthday is also today. Rick Littrell was a guy, a service engineer with, application engineer with a lot of sense of humor. And he now lives in Lexington, Kentucky.
He ran the demo center.
If you allow me, Aaron, I have just one funny story, because you asked everybody to tell a funny story. Probably Martin, I don't know if you still remember, this was the early days when we were still at the Avenue Louise. We had to do a demonstration for a Swedish customer. And as you know, Swedish customers, they always come the day before. And of course, they want to go out and drink, get pissed actually, to really drunk, because demos for Swedish people or any Scandinavian group, they were always very smelly the day after. Maybe you know that as well, Dennis. So in this particular demo, we always have, in the morning, we have a chat with the customer, an introduction, and also to see how the day is going to go. And for this particular customer, one of the guys was just lying on the ground, fast asleep, with no shoes on.
Yeah, I lost his shoes.
You remember that?
Oh,
So the guy has slept the whole day through without his shoes, and he never ever saw the demo. He was so drunk, and they must have gone through the night. And he slept the whole day in the demo center on the carpet without his shoes. I still remember that.
They started already on the plane when they came to Scitex.
Of course, yeah, because then it was still business class and you could drink for free, right?
Okay, Andrea, is Andrea still there?
I am. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So I joined Scitex in 1982, the same time as Eva. And after the first basic training, I was assigned a very difficult job to work with Micha Kidron to write the scanner operator's manual, the interface, the CSS was it. And I have never seen a scanner in my life. So that was quite a challenge. And then I was sent to Brussels as an application engineer, and I was traveling around Europe for quite a few years, which I really enjoyed very much. And after that, I became the contact person for all the workarounds that Dennis mentioned, that the Scitex had all the bugs and problems. I was the focal point to report the problems to R&D in Israel. And while I was in, okay, my name is also not spelled correctly, but never mind. And I was one of the people that got hitched in Scitex. I married Jeremy Edwards, who was a service engineer in London. We met in Israel when he came to Israel for the engineers training, and we were together for 26 years. He stayed in Scitex after I left Scitex after 12 years in 1995. He remained in Scitex, and he was with Scitex when it became Creo Scitex, and he was still with Scitex when it was taken over by Kodak. We moved to England for his job with Kodak. And unfortunately, in 2009, he suddenly passed away. So I came back from England on my own, and try to do my best to hold the fort for our two boys, who were then 21 and 18 years old. And I'm again in Belgium. I do keep in touch with some of the Scitex people like Glyn Evans and Edwin Blenkinsop, who were engineers in Scitex. I have also contact with Angela Ostman and Albert Kolb and Jurek Lifshitz and Christian Disnook and Arthur Rubinstein, if you remember those people.
Yes.
And Keith Hauser, who was an application engineer in Scitex as well. So there are quite a few connections that are still alive after all these years. And like many of you, I also feel that my time in Scitex was a fantastic time. I am very grateful for that. And of course, especially for finding my soulmate in the company.
Can you tell us about this paper, this Scitex published paper?
This was something that I actually received from Peter Habash, who was also an engineer in Scitex. And when Jeremy passed away, he sent me this copy as a gesture, I suppose, as a reminder. So this is from 1980, was it 84? When the UK office was moved to a new place in London, and Jeremy was there, one of the service engineers. So that's all I know about this. But clearly, it was great times because it was the satellite that was developed by Scitex. And it was the first time that they did this satellite transmission of data from the Olympic Games, if you remember that. That was fantastic, exciting stuff, right?
No, this is the satellite, yeah.
The satellite that we used in the Olympic Games. And it was huge, 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 big news. You know, today we take so much for granted, but I remember the disk drives that were like a washing machine, and the computer rooms that you had to pay for the air conditioning to install the computers and the magnetic tape drives and all that. And, you know, it's crazy when you think that you can have a little USB and have all of those things on one little USB key, you know, the data size that we can now manage.
Yeah, this is 300 megabyte, and you can hold in your hand today 1 terabyte.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are dinosaurs really when we think about the Scitex times, but hey, it was very exciting. I felt it when I joined Scitex that I was in the company of very clever, very creative people, and it was very, very exciting. So I lost my job in Scitex thanks to Willy Joshua in 95. Following that, as I was a mother of two, I have used my time to be dedicated to my children for a while, but also to study with Open University, and I finished my degree. Eventually, it took a while. And after a couple of years, I worked for another Israeli company called Nur Macro Printers that I'm sure some of you may have heard of. And it was a little bit also connected to Scitex because Monia Gam was there, Alon Avnon was there, and so that was quite nice. And I think Dirk Rens and Dirk Driessen were also connected at some stage. And I worked there for a couple of years, and not quite the same, but still. And then, funny enough, if I started with Scitex doing the scanner interface manual I worked in Israel with Udi Zohar, who also was the behind Shira, and then now he has a company called Psik. And when Jem died, he contacted me, and I worked with him for Psik for a couple of years and as a technical writer. And as it happened, I was back at Drupa in 2012. And that was fantastic because it was like going back in time. The industry is like a little bubble. I saw loads of people that I remember from Scitex days and Noor days as well. And it was very, very nice to see people and reconnect and to see that we had this family that Martin was talking about. Those connections are remaining to this day on some level. So that's great. And today I have my two boys. They are both married. They didn't find their wives in Belgium. One of them married an American, and the younger one has married a Chinese girl from Malaysia. I'm very proud of this because they are very open-minded and international like they should be, and very happy. And I have, before COVID, I was busy doing all sorts of creative things like learning to draw, learning to dance the Argentine tango. I'm involved with an amateur dramatic society here doing props. And I'm also learning a language now in COVID, and I'm trying to make sure that my little gray cells are active. I'm learning Italian.
Okay.
So that's me.
Thank you, Andrea.
Nice to see you all, and congratulations to Andy for the grandchild. I don't have the grandchild yet. I'm hoping, and congratulations to Martin for his birthday.
Is Ira Gold here? No, he's not. Okay.
Peter Jackson next to him.
Eitan, unmute.
I'm still here, almost awake.
I'm very sorry to say that Eitan failed to send pictures, so you talk on blank.
I think this is the best picture of me yet, so I'm fine with this.
Okay.
Okay, so Nitzani hired me around 1983, and in hiring me, got actually a package deal because he hired Rafi and myself, which not only both of us went to high school together, the army together, and the design school together, but before Scitex, we had a design studio together. So as we joined, we became application engineers, mostly for the Vista. And we did this for about a year separately, traveling the world and instructing. You'll hear from Rafi his side too. But then following this design fiasco that Eva described before, where Effie hired a very expensive Italian designer to design the next workstations, and what came back was really terrible, he opened this up to a local Israeli competition. And Rafi and I decided we would apply as well, despite the fact that we were employees of Scitex. And we had this discussion with Effie, we had this meeting with him, and we said, you have to give us a gentleman agreement that if we are chosen to be the design that will be used, you allow us to open a design studio within Scitex and develop this, and not come up with a excuse that we have responsibilities as application engineers and then we can't do this. So, and following this was a very intense race to Drupa to get all of these designs implemented and working. And they did. I mean, the designs that came out of this internal design studio were actually the designs that became the Scitex products. Following that, my journey was a bit different, and I headed off to the US for a project with Eli Israeli, which was a 10-month project to develop what was going to be the Visionary project, called Visionary. And due to a slight miscalculation, it ended up being 21 years in Boston. And I remained there for 12 years working for Scitex. And I left Scitex to become a user interface designer, which I've been doing for the past 25 years. 10 years ago, we came back to Israel. We have 3 children. One is 28, a cinematographer traveling the world making movies, and 2 younger children. My youngest just last Tuesday got drafted into the army. And coincidentally, COVID caught me on a project which I was doing with another Scitex alum. I don't know if you remember Kit Goldfarb.
Yeah.
She worked in Scitex
Markham.
Israel for a short time in Markham, and she didn't stay very long in Israel, and she moved to the US, and now she has a NGO which deals with food security in Africa. And my big passion is photography. And she asked me to join them on a trip to Kenya. And I went there to photograph the whole ordeal, where they train local farmers to grow sustainable growing plants, because the things they actually know how to plant die now with climate change. There's too much water, not enough water, too much sunshine, not enough sunshine. Everything is berserk, and the things they do know how to grow are not growing. So they put up these projects in which they teach them how to grow things that do grow. And it was fascinating. However, it was cut short by COVID, and I was stuck in Kenya and had to escape by the skin of my teeth to get back to Israel. Coincidentally, number 2, to do with what we're doing right now, I'm just starting to be involved with a project with a company called Confettis, which facilitates family events on Zoom. So this is a new venture I'm getting into, because COVID has illustrated to everyone that these get-togethers are very clumsy. People don't know exactly what to do. Either everyone talks together, no one talks, or there's no program. Here, Nitzani is master of ceremonies, and he took care of it. But in family events, that's not always the case. And this company,
believe me,
what we're trying to
when
do
we have Zoom in a family, I'm also taking charge.
I know, Nitzani. I know you, not from today. So that's it. And in this new venture, even though I'm 64 now, I'm starting as a vice president product in this new venture, and hopefully it will be interesting. We'll see. For the past 25 years, though, I've been a consultant for user interface design, working in the United States and in Israel, Europe, all over the place.
Okay,
so
thank you.
That's it. And I'm the only person here who managed to stick this into 5 minutes. I'm just wanting to get this on record.
Noted.
Just a comment. Eitan, your photography is fantastic, but you put on the Facebook pages. I really wonder how you did what you did, and I hope I keep seeing them.
Thank you, Dennis. That's great to hear.
So
I really
as
enjoy it.
Eitan said, Eitan and Rafi go hand in hand together over a long history. And just to prove it to you, Eitan didn't send any pictures, nor did Rafi. Okay, Rafi.
Yeah, but I compensated for this. There are multiple images in the chat that you are, welcome to download. Most of them have to do with prototypes we did for the Drupa of 84? 86. Yes. So, highlights. My first day at Scitex, I'm sitting in the little reception area for Scitex Herzliya. Scitex is at the time probably one of the best high-tech companies in Israel. I don't know nothing about it. And down goes this like African Amazon and says, okay, let's go up. Now in Israel at that time, that was really, really unique. She was Nitzani's secretary and her dad was the ambassador or something. Anyway, I was hired by Nitzani and like keep mentioning, he got a package deal with me and Eitan, and for a long time, a lot of people, although we look nothing alike, couldn't distinguish between me and Eitan at Scitex, including Effie, who would just have the term Rafi Eitan. And I still remember the day when somebody comes running and says, oh, you have to go to Effie's office immediately. And that was when we moved from being application engineers to being designers, did the Scitex line for Drupa 86, and from there on, we were Scitex designers, which was an amazing thing. Eitan left for the US, I stayed, and then when Effie moved to San Francisco, I get this phone call and says, didn't we talk about you coming over to work for me? And I said, no, we didn't. And Effie said, we did. And apparently he struck a deal with Shamir, who was at the time the CEO, that I can come over and work for him for a year and can go back to Scitex after this year. And like the story says, I'm still here in the US, in California. We did the Effie thing, which was basically restarting Scitex from the beginning with exactly the same method. Where, Scitex in the beginning got the interface to the scanner and plotter. We took apart the copiers and started building very fast color printers, highly successful. After Effie left, I got spun out of that company and built my own company, which had to do with, of all things, interactive whiteboards for educations, which I did until 2013. And then we sold that company to a large Korean company. And since then, I'm mostly advising and mentoring startups at both Stanford and Berkeley. And that's about yay. That's about yay. The thing I want to emphasize is when I'm looking at all these people in this conference and I'm thinking, wow, Nitzani had the insight to pick up and hire such a unique collection of people. Some of them, I remember going into Scitex and meeting Dennis, for example, and other characters. These were really characters, Martin and everybody else in Scitex. These were really, really unique individuals. Yeah, Rami is smiling. Yes, meeting Rami was another shock. So, Nitzani, big kudos for you, because looking back, I think the most important thing I see it is that you've created this unique group of people who actually contributed to Scitex being the uniquely creative and extremely responsive corporation. It's anywhere from the story of moving the boat from from Boston to San Francisco to hiring us, which we had no engineering background, to everybody else. I think that's actually the core of the journey, is hiring these amazing people in order to facilitate amazing things.
It's not only contribution to Scitex, but contribution to the Israeli high-tech industry. We were the first high-tech real startup that we were the second to go IPO on NASDAQ after Elsin. And it was really a fantastic story. Many years later, somebody, American author, wrote a book about the Israeli startup nation. This is the name of the book. Fascinating book about everything, about all the people, all the characters, except for one thing. Scitex is not mentioned there. So I read the book and I was really angry. So I wrote him a 2-page letter for which I have not received any response, by the way, telling him that he misread the map. And we were the first, we paved the trail, and we've done it. I have to mention that 2 weeks ago, I assembled another Zoom meeting that also took 4 hours to complete. And this was with the real founders of the company and the first innovators, the first people to join the company. I said that I'm employee number 11, so we got like 20 people like Uzi and Yaakov Naor and Aryeh Rosenfeld and Yoav and Gerald. And I also mentioned to them that we are the first, we were the best, and we have not been mentioned in that book. And also the final note on this, you say that this was the best time of your life. I can assure you that all the 20 or 18 people that participated in that meeting said exactly the same thing. Yoav said that this was the best time of his life. Arya said so, and Asa Bar-Lev. And so I wholeheartedly agree about it. Meir Ben-Zeev is not.
Sorry, Nitzani. Are you recording all of these
Yes.
Are you going to share those with all of us?
Yes, I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and the last 4 hours there was 1 gigabyte, so I guess this one will be the same. But
Can
it
I
was,
have one minute, Nitzani?
Yeah.
I want to refer to Rafi and Eitan. Well, first of all, I'm very thankful that you didn't interview me because then I would have never gotten the job, I'm sure. But anyway, I was lucky to be before you were hiring. But as I remember, because I do come from the design background, Effie always had like an obsession with the design of the machine. And he taught me the word user-friendly. And he was always obsessed with Italy, maybe because of his wife at the time, or because the Italians are good designers. But I'm so happy to hear that Rafi and Eitan resolved that problem, because he was very, very, let's say, he was never 100% satisfied with the design. He was very proud of the ingegneri, as he used to call them, remember? But he was the design always said, this is not user-friendly, this is not ergonomic, this is not, and I think Eitan, from what I hear, this was much after I left, Eitan and Rafi solved that problem in-house, and that only speaks highly of them and of the company. I don't know if you guys agree with me.
Nitzani, I wanted to say something about the Startup Nation because you mentioned it. First of all, I met Zinger, one of the guys that wrote it, because not only that Startup Nation was not mentioned in Scitex, the highlight was Better Place, that the company that disappeared after a year and a half. So not only that the book was completely far from everything else, but so that was the main thing. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
I don't know if any of you went through Ben Gurion Airport in the last, I don't know, probably about 2 years ago. There was a display, you know, when you walk down the ramp.
Yeah.
There was a display of technology inventions in Israel. And I mean, I worked in Scitex and I worked in Indigo. If Benny Lander managed to get himself in that display, and there was no mention of Scitex there at all. And I got very angry about that, because there wouldn't have been Indigo if there hadn't been Scitex. And in the end, I ended up writing an article for SignPro magazine. I think, Nitzani, you sent me some logos for that. And actually, in that article, I wrote the history of how Scitex contributed to the to practically everything in digital
imaging
graphics today. And I actually didn't mention Indigo.
Yeah.
Nitzani, one of
No,
the things that
I've been consulting to many companies in this market, and even at Mondi now, I'm dealing with Ricoh, Canon, HP, Kodak, and there are so many Scitex people. Definitely, most of the imaging in Israel, they all started with Scitex people. If you go to Indigo, you go to any other start, even to the companies that came afterwards. Like Precise, and I'll give you a million of them.
Eli Israeli told us during the last Zoom that he compiled a list several years ago already of 26 companies that are based on the core of ex-Scitex people.
Yeah.
26 of them.
Just one mention for some of us went on and stayed on up through the Creo days, and it was very disappointed when I used to give the demos inside the, when visitors would come and would mention the history board in Scitex. When Creo took over, everything was Creo and no mention of Scitex. I thought it was terrible that Creo had invented everything, and who was Scitex?
Yeah.
Well, Amos Michelson told me once in 2000, he said, Danny, you see it says Creo Scitex, I can guarantee you in 2 years, you'll see only the name Creo, you'll never see Scitex there. It was, some people took it as an aim to do it, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, Ruti joined us too late, but here you are, so you have the floor, and unmute yourself. Unmute. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, get closer to the mic.
So hi, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. I remember this photo. This was in Italy in one of the shows. And this policeman, he didn't have teeth, but we didn't know. We gave him nuts to eat. And it was really funny. And it was outside the Scitex booth in Italy. I started Scitex at 1973, but not in the company. I was working in New York at a company named TextFi that purchased the first Scitex machine ever and gave the name a response to the first computer of Scitex, which was for the knitting industry. I worked there. The Scitex machine was stationed in a Grand Central Station, the train station in New York. And each designer from the company had few hours a week to come to work on Scitex computer. And when I came back to Israel at 1975, I sent I called the company 2 months after they had an ad in the paper that they were looking for application engineers. And Effie answered the call, and he said that he already hired 4 people and I cannot join the company. So I called him every afternoon at 5 o'clock and asked him the same question, and he gave me the same answer. And after 2 weeks, he said that he has to see me because he's very curious about me, that I didn't give up and continue calling him till he accepted me to come for an interview. And this is how I started in Scitex. We were in the first course with Danny Herzka, Reuven Tripp, and Miri Beek. And from that time on, I was traveling a lot to Japan and a lot to the United States. And at that time, I also was stationed in England for a few months for the carpeting industry. If you remember the big printed carpet in England. And from there on, I was in Scitex 17 years till I left, and I went to work with Udi Zohar at Shira Computers, which Andrea mentioned before. I was with Udi Zohar for 4.5 years, and in Udi's company, there was also a lot of Scitex people working. And I left there and I went to work for the research and development of art schools in Israel. And again, I was working there as a book publisher, the head of the book publishing of the company for many years, also 17 years, till I retired, and now I'm retired. And in this photo that you see, I'm sitting with Gabi Rausnitz, and this was in Drupa, if I'm not mistaken, when maybe 82, when the Prisma just started, and nothing
86.
was working.
86,
86, and nothing was working, absolutely nothing. And the salesman would stand behind us and will give the demo, and we will do the work. And every day, the salesman, the story that what the system can do got bigger and larger, and nothing was ever true of what he said. But in the end, the system, you know, was after few versions, was working, after few years, was working as it should. Gabi is no longer with us, as you know, and that's it. That's what I can say.
Let me just point out that working or not working, this is not important.
The show is important.
No, we got $25 million in orders on this show.
Yes.
Aaron, you need to teach everybody the Hebrew saying, "Yeh beseder."
Yeah. And Nitzani, at that show, Effie took me aside and he said that there was Swiss people and they want to buy the system and nothing was working. And he said, you have to do the demo and you have to make it work. And I was so nervous, you know, see, there was about 6 men sitting behind me. And remember the board that we used to put the measurements, you know, with what was it? I forgot the name of the machine. Anyway, since nothing was working and he brought his own design and I couldn't scan it and I couldn't do anything with it, I asked the head of the company that was sitting behind me to come and work the computer and I'll tell him what to do. And he didn't want to, but then he came and he played and I said, why don't you make a window? Why don't you make this and that? And he was so proud of himself that he can do it, that they forgot completely about the page because I couldn't do the page. There was no way I could scan, nothing was working. And there were so many stories about everybody of the application engineer have probably stories like that, how we managed, you know, to move things. And the Yeh Beseder is a really a saying that we used to say, and it's true. Yeh Beseder, and it was Beseder.
Ruti,
Nitzani, I'm just surprised at one thing. Everybody's talking about machine doesn't work here, machine doesn't work. To be honest with you, I was in Scitex for a few years. What I was happy was being in everywhere in the world, meeting people, making all the best time of my life. Even when Ruti is saying things are not working, I remember that I was with Ruti and Ilan Fono in Nikko in Japan.
In Japan.
When I remember me skiing with with Uri Leibovich, and he left his keys behind every customers in Europe. Isabel mentioned Grenzach. I had a great time at Wattwil in Grenzach with there. So I mean, for me, Scitex was really a place that I was in Mexico for 3 months together with Dan Sharon. Who else can have those type of stuff going? So.
Do you all remember Samitov? Do you remember Samitov?
Of course.
Yeah, he's in Australia.
Australia, he was in Holland.
Yeah, no, he's in Australia now for many years. By the way,
Samitov, we did the first time we created barcodes together with on the Scitex system in Mir, and we sent it to some company to test it. Nobody knew what a barcode was at that time, so just speak about Samitov, but it was nice.
Danny, you remember that the slogan for Scitex was "Join Scitex and see the world."
Literally, I joined Scitex. I joined Scitex because I was not in a combat unit, and I said my chances to go abroad as a security guy are very slim. So I saw an ad that are looking for people with academic experience and like textiles. So my father used to work in Kitan, so he wrote in English the letter for me. Otherwise, I would never got the company because my English was the worst. So I think my father should have gone to the interview. And I remember, like, even in our training course, one day Effie Arazi came and said, in the middle of the, before everybody, and he said, Miri, what are you doing now? Let's go on my bike and let's see the sunset. And here she went out of the class with Effie and they went to see the sunset. That's what our
fearless leader.
Yeah, no, but when Danny Zetland, for example, in the first group, Danny Zetland was very afraid of terror attack. So he spread out in every floor, only few people. So if there'll be a terror attack, some people will stay working in the company. And we're going to dinner and we're waiting for Danny. And here comes the elevator. Danny Zetland is there, and around him, 10 Arabs with kafias and everything else. The guy was as white as can be. So, you know, I had a good time.
I have a question. I have a question to Ruthie. After like 50 years, I need to know the truth. We had an installation of a textile system in Cranston, Rhode Island.
Right.
And Hanan Gilot, myself as service engineers, and you and Miri as the trainer. And we came in one car. We stayed in a hotel downtown and we drove. We left the car outside. And I think that Miri was driving. And we came in and we had conversation and some training. And all of a sudden, the financial manager, it was a small company in a small building, came fuming, angry. Somebody scratched his Cadillac or his big car outside. And he pointed to Miri and he wanted to kill her and to kill us and to kill the sale of the system. So the question is, who did scratch the car?
I don't even remember that at all.
Okay.
Sorry.
Who scratched it?
I'm really happy to see everybody, especially my good friend Ruth, who wrote me these days, and it's true that we have not been in contact, but the love and the admiration has always been there. And I didn't really know the story because communication stopped for so many years and it wasn't easy. But in the meantime, you know, you guys mentioned that Scitex was not mentioned here and Scitex was not mentioned here. But in the 40 odd years that have passed, whenever I met Israelis, like people that have lived here, like the Israeli ambassadors and people like that, and they say, what did you do in Israel? And I said, I used to work for Scitex. They said, what? You know, I think Scitex, well, time has gone by, but many years ago was in the collective memory as a very outstanding company. When I saw Roger Matalon 2 years ago, he told me that he once met Effie for lunch in California, and they had lunch with Steve Jobs. So I think that Effie is somebody who is well known. There's a biography somewhere that I have not read, and it's in Hebrew. But also, it's like, I don't know if you guys remember that he used to appear in...
There is an English translation of the book. I Did It My Way, something like that it's called.
That sounds like Frank Sinatra, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
My
But
Way, I think it's a
I
picture
think Effie was like this...
with his dog on the cover.
And I think I remember he once told me, I don't have a plant, I have an ego farm. And he had a big ego himself. And I think he made us all like bond together and stick together in all his craziness and his brightness. So I think we have a lot to thank him for.
Okay, thank you. I think that the last one will
I
be...
wanted to remind you something. You remember the pouring party where we tried the lasers in your the laser for the party? Remember, it was on the second floor in the Ma'abada.
I was there, yeah.
Remember that, Nitzani? And Effie came and he said, what are you doing? It's after lunch hour. Remember?
No.
And we had to tell him that we are planning a party, a Purim party. And we invited him to the party. He didn't come, but he sent us a case of champagne to the party. Remember that?
No, I don't.
Me said one.
I was there, I think.
No, Dennis, you didn't work at the company at that time.
So they had multiple Purim parties.
And
Had one very big one at Scitex Israel. I came dressed in a kimono and a false arm, which every time I handed it out, like to shake hands, somebody would grab it and the whole arm would come off. But that was a...
Have you guys heard of Galit? Do you know where she is?
Yes, we do. Also, the last one, although he never confirmed his participation, is Stanley. Stanley, unmute yourself and tell us what you're doing.
There's also Paul Gettinger on.
Is it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Oh boy.
Hello,
real
Stanley.
quick. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Stanley.
Talk about family and everything else. I've been in printing ever since I've been in elementary school. I'm in my 70s now. I started off literally in not kindergarten, but like second, third grade. By fifth, sixth grade, I was picking up spilled galleys, individual type faces, and individual slugs of lead, different, like the upside down, a P, a B, a B, and a Q. They all kind of look alike. But anyway, long story short, I made all the transitions from letter set to offset, all the way into at 76. I was an offset printer or an offset stripper, and decided I wanted to learn about the computers. Were going to take my job away. I went to RIT. My timing was great. Nitzani hired me in '83 after I think 3 rejections. I think I spilled a beer on one of the people by accident. And I stayed with Scitex through Creo, and I'm telling you, even with Creo, I had a great time through all of it. I left when I was actually forced to leave when Kodak took over, and it was the first time in a long time that I had some weekends free. And it was really nice, and I basically did a number of different types of consulting jobs for a good portion of years, and eventually I ended up creating a transportation department for a nonprofit organization involved in physically and mentally handicapped individuals. And it was wonderful, and it was a great experience. And last but not least, I'm a 3-year now recovered pancreatic cancer survivor. and I hike about 6 to 8 miles a day. I am very much in tune with my body and with the space around me. Very physically, I'm very, very happy with myself. My wife and I have been married and together for a long, long time, over 40 years, and things are great, and I have zero complaints, and kids are wonderful. Everybody's safe, grandkids are great, and life is marvelous. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you, Stanley. Next time, confirm your participation and send pictures.
I'm sorry, I didn't have any pictures. Like I looked, I couldn't find anything.
Okay, let me just in closing say that, as I said, I'm going to have all this material uploaded to the cloud, and I will send all the participants the links, and you're more than welcome to forward them to other people. What I've added is this. I didn't want this Zoom to be 16 hours. 4 hours is enough. So I collected several links to several video clips. This is one that I liked, the Scitex Great Times. Martin Struck did a fantastic job of the best of my life. This is a promotional video that STA prepared, no, STA, I think, all the way to print in 2009. And Danny, instead of sending a picture or 3 pictures, he just sent me a link of all his Scitex pictures. And here it is. Danny, you have like, I don't remember, maybe 40, 50 pictures. I can tell you, with my long experience and my long collection, together with Eitan, I have quite a few, like 1,500, maybe 2,000 pictures that we accumulated during the Excite website when it was still up in the air.
I want to say that in those pictures, a lot of pictures, Ruti, Isabel, Isabella, Nitzani, I mean, of this era, just so you know.
Yeah, exactly. So this brings us to exactly to 4 hours, as I expected. I was planning for 1.5 hours, and this became 4 hours, and nobody wants to go. Thank you very much for your participation. And maybe in 10 years, we'll meet again.
Okay, thank you, Nitzani, for organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nitzani.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks a lot.
But organize another one. This was fun.
Yeah,
Thank you again.
It is.
Hey, nice to see you guys.
I can tell you, no, I just want to tell you that next weekend, I'm organizing a Scitex STN Zoom. Ruti, you said that you were in Japan many times. So I would like to invite you too.
Months. With Topan and Tokai.
Thank you.
ניתני, אני אדבר איתך גם כן, אני הייתי ביפן הרבה, אני קלטתי את רמי ואת כולם שם.
אני גם הייתי ביפן. במים.
Was my translator.
I have the best Japanese story ever. I don't want to take more time, but I have like really amazing Japan story.
Tell it. Come on.
Okay. So I'm coming to Japan with the first prototype of the black systems, the COM systems, and I'm supposed to assemble it because at that time, nobody knows how to physically assemble those furniture. And I was sent to Japan just for this trade show to assemble it and you know, train them on the new system. I'm getting to the hotel, I'm getting to, there are multiple stories about this, but anyway, I get to Scitex Nippon and they're really nice to me. And they keep saying, would you like to see the Imperial Gardens? And I said, no, there's a system that we have to set up because there's a trade show. I'm not very, comfortable with going sightseeing when there's a system to assemble. No, you really have to see those gardens. And I'm like, no. And he goes out of the room, comes back and tries to make me do some other sightseeing. It took me a few hours to understand the system have not arrived. It's still in custom, and they are uncomfortable telling me that they screwed up and the system is not there. But that was the beginning. It was an amazing experience teaching the first course on these new systems and learning the culture. I've been there many times, like not only for Scitex, but for EFI, and then for my own company. I love the Japanese culture, but there are really amazing stories about this.
Okay, folks. So it was nice to see you all, and yeah,
here.
Let's see you again.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye, Rico.
Bye-bye.
Tell me what's up.
Nos vemos.
¿A dónde?
¿A dónde? A Bogotá.